Tonight on Background Historian, we travel to the sands of ancient Egypt to explore one of the greatest wonders of the world, the pyramids. For over 4,000 years, these vast monuments have stood at Giza, silent yet commanding, inspiring awe, mystery, and endless questions. How were they built? Why did the Egyptians dedicate such immense labor to these stone mountains? Who were the men and women who designed, quarried, and hauled the blocks into place? Across 20 immersive episodes, we will trace the story from the first step pyramids to Khufu's Great Pyramid, from tools and ramps to religious beliefs, from the lives of workers in their villages to the legacy that endures into our own time. The pyramids are more than tombs, they are symbols of ambition, devotion, and human ingenuity. Together, we will walk through history, brick by brick, as we uncover the how and why of Egypt's timeless monuments. The desert is quiet, except for the wind that brushes across the golden sand. In the distance, three colossal forms rise from the plateau, their edges sharp against the horizon, their mass so immense that even after thousands of years, they seem beyond human scale. These are the pyramids of Giza, the Great Pyramid of Khufu, the slightly smaller pyramid of his son Khafre, and the more modest but still monumental pyramid of Menkaure. They stand as if carved not by human hands but by the earth itself, eternal symbols of a civilization that has long since passed away. When we look upon the pyramids today, we see ruins in part, their smooth casing stones mostly gone, their white limestone cores exposed, their surroundings eroded by millennia. Yet in their time, these pyramids gleamed under the Egyptian sun, brilliant with polished limestone, visible for miles across the desert. They were not only tombs, they were the physical embodiment of Egyptian kingship, faith, and cosmic order. They were meant to last forever, to house the pharaohs in their journey to the afterlife, and to proclaim to all who saw them, "Here is the power of Egypt." This first part of our journey begins not with the technical details of chisels and ramps, nor with debates over how the blocks were moved, but with the mystique of the pyramids themselves. We ask, why have these monuments so deeply fascinated people for millennia? Why do they still captivate us, long after the civilization that created them has vanished? The presence of the pyramids. Imagine standing at the base of Khufu's Great Pyramid. The structure rises to a height of nearly 480 feet in its original form, built from more than 2 million stone blocks, each weighing 2 to 3 tons on average. The scale is staggering. Each side of the base stretches over 750 feet, aligned with uncanny precision to the cardinal points of the compass. Even today, engineers marvel at the accuracy of the construction, so precise that the differences between sides measure only inches. For the ancient Egyptians, this precision was not an accident. It reflected their understanding of the cosmos, of order over chaos, of harmony between heaven and earth. The pyramid was a symbol not just of power, but of Ma'at, the principle of truth, balance, and cosmic justice that governed Egyptian life. Our citizen of ancient Athens may have ended his day reflecting on balance between oikos and polis. Here, in Egypt, balance is between human life and eternal order. The pyramid embodied this balance, pointing upward toward the gods while rooted firmly in the earth. Early visitors and observers. Even in antiquity, the pyramids inspired wonder. Greek historians like Herodotus visited Egypt in the 5th century BCE, centuries after the pyramids were already ancient. He wrote of their grandeur, of the labor needed to build them, and of the suffering of workers. Though some of his details were mistaken, his awe was genuine. To him, as to countless travelers after, the pyramids were unlike anything else on earth. Later, Roman tourists carved graffiti into their walls, marveling at their age. Medieval Arab scholars debated their origins, some claiming they were built before the biblical flood, others that they were meant as storehouses of ancient wisdom. Legends grew around them, myths of hidden treasures and secret chambers. The pyramids became canvases upon which every age projected its own questions and dreams. And so it continues today. Scientists probe them with lasers and scanners, archaeologists dig in their shadows, tourists snap photos, and filmmakers imagine mysteries within their stones. The pyramids remain, unmoved by our interpretations, patient in their silence. First impressions, how and why? Two questions have haunted observers for centuries. How were the pyramids built, and why did the Egyptians dedicate such immense resources to them? The how has fueled endless speculation. Some imagine lost technologies, others propose alien intervention, and many trust in the ingenuity of human labor guided by careful planning. Theories range from massive straight ramps stretching for miles, to spiraling internal ramps concealed within the structure, to ingenious methods of lubrication and leverage. What unites them all is recognition that the construction was one of the greatest feats of engineering in history. The why is equally profound. Why would a society pour decades of effort, enormous amounts of stone, and the lives of thousands into building tombs? The answer lies in Egyptian beliefs about kingship and the afterlife. To the Egyptians, the pharaoh was not just a man but a god on earth, a mediator between the divine and human realms. His death required a monument worthy of his role, a house of eternity that would ensure his continued existence and the stability of the cosmos. Thus, the pyramids are as much religious texts in stone as they are tombs. Their shape, pointing upward, symbolized the rays of the sun. Their internal chambers echoed the myths of creation and resurrection. Their permanence reassured the living that Egypt itself was eternal, rooted in divine favor. The land that made them possible. To understand the pyramids, we must also understand Egypt itself. The Nile River was the lifeblood of the civilization, flooding each year, leaving behind fertile soil that sustained agriculture. This abundance freed laborers during flood season, when fields were underwater, to work on royal projects. The stability of the Nile allowed Egypt to accumulate wealth, organize labor, and pursue monumental construction unlike any other civilization. The desert plateau west of the Nile provided solid bedrock upon which pyramids could be built. Nearby quarries supplied limestone for casing, granite from Aswan provided inner chambers, and local stone formed the core. Geography, geology, and environment all conspired to make the pyramids possible. All through the ages. Standing before the Great Pyramid, even now, one feels small. Its stones are weathered, its apex lost, yet its presence overwhelms. It is not simply the size, but the sense of time. These structures were already ancient when Rome was young. They were already ruins when the Middle Ages began. They remind us of human ambition stretched toward eternity. For the ancient Egyptians, the pyramid was not a ruin but a promise, the promise that death could be overcome, that kings could rise to the heavens, that order could triumph over chaos. For later ages, they became mysteries, puzzles, wonders. For us, they remain a connection to the deep past, a conversation across time with people who dreamed of immortality and, in some sense, achieved it. Reflection. In this first step of our journey, we have not yet asked how stones were cut or why ramps were angled. Instead, we have tried to feel what it is like to stand before these monuments, to see them not only as puzzles but as presences. The pyramids endure because they speak not only of engineering but of meaning. They are not just piles of stone but messages in stone, proclaiming a civilization's vision of life, death, and eternity. As we continue in this series, we will peel back the layers of history, exploring how pyramid building began, how it evolved, how it was accomplished, and what it meant. But for now, let us sit with their silence, let us gaze upward at their immensity, and let us honor the mystery that has drawn humanity to them for over 4,000 years. Closing image. Picture yourself at Giza as dusk falls. The desert cools, the air grows still, and the pyramids cast long shadows across the plateau. Tourists depart, archaeologists close their notebooks, but the stones remain, bathed in fading light. In their silence, they remind us of eternity, of ambition turned into stone, of questions without end. The Great Pyramids wait, as they always have, patient under the stars. Looking ahead. In the next part of our journey, we will travel back in time to the birth of the pyramid idea, tracing how Egypt moved from simple mud-brick tombs called mastabas to the first step pyramids that paved the way for the marvels of Giza. The story of the Great Pyramids does not begin at Giza. It begins much earlier, with humbler structures built for the earliest kings of Egypt. These structures, simple at first, carried within them the seeds of an idea that would grow into the largest stone monuments on Earth. To understand how Khufu's Great Pyramid came to be, we must look back to the mastabas of Egypt's early dynasties, and to the slow evolution that turned rectangular mud-brick tombs into stone stairways to the heavens. In this part of our journey, we trace the birth of the pyramid idea. We explore how the earliest Egyptians buried their dead, why kingship demanded more lasting monuments, and how innovation, faith, and ambition combined to create the first great step pyramid, a revolution in stone that set the stage for everything to come. The mastaba, origins of royal tombs. In the earliest periods of Egyptian history, the time of the first dynasty, around 3100 BCE, royal tombs were rectangular structures built of mud brick. Archaeologists call them mastabas, from the Arabic word for bench, because of their flat, bench-like shape. A mastaba looked like a low, sloping rectangle, its walls built outward, with an underground burial chamber reached by shafts. Above, chapels allowed offerings to be made to the spirit of the deceased. Surrounding rooms stored goods, pottery, tools, food, and objects meant for use in the afterlife. These tombs reflected the Egyptian belief that death was not an end but a continuation. The deceased lived on in another realm, and needed sustenance, possessions, and rituals. The mastaba was both grave and house, a place where the body rested and where priests and family maintained the memory of the dead. For common people, burials were simple, often shallow graves in the desert sand. But for kings, who embodied divine authority, tombs had to reflect power and permanence. The mastaba was the first attempt to create a lasting monument for royalty. The cult of eternity. From the very beginning, Egyptian kingship was tied to eternity. Pharaohs were not seen as mere rulers but as divine intermediaries, linked to gods such as Horus and Ra. Their lives on earth were temporary, but their souls, called the Ka and Ba, endured forever. Thus, their tombs had to endure as well. A crumbling grave would mean not only dishonor but danger, the risk that the pharaoh's afterlife would be disrupted, and with it, the cosmic order of Egypt. The need for permanence pushed builders to experiment with stronger, more durable materials. Mud brick, though abundant and easy to shape, was vulnerable to erosion. Stone, by contrast, was eternal. From early on, Egyptians used limestone for some mastaba facings and granite for certain elements. These tentative steps toward stone would eventually grow into full-scale stone construction. The leap toward monumentality. By the time of the Second Dynasty, mastabas had become larger and more complex. Some were surrounded by elaborate courtyards, walls, and subsidiary burials. The scale reflected the growing centralization of the Egyptian state and the increasing power of its rulers. Yet these structures remained essentially horizontal. The leap toward verticality, the idea that a tomb could rise upward as well as outward, would come with one of history's most remarkable figures, Imhotep, the architect and priest who served King Djoser in the Third Dynasty. Imhotep and the Step Pyramid. Around 2650 BCE, King Djoser, the second ruler of the Third Dynasty, commissioned a tomb at Saqqara, near Memphis. His architect, Imhotep, took the traditional mastaba form and transformed it into something entirely new. Instead of building one mastaba, Imhotep stacked multiple mastabas of decreasing size on top of one another, creating a structure that rose in steps toward the sky. The result was the Step Pyramid of Djoser, the first pyramid in history and the first large-scale stone monument in the world. Rising to a height of 200 feet, it dwarfed all earlier structures. Its 6 steps formed a giant staircase, a symbolic path by which the king could ascend to the heavens and join the gods. Imhotep's innovation was revolutionary. He abandoned mud brick for stone, demonstrating that stone could be quarried, shaped, and assembled on a massive scale. He created not just a tomb but an entire funerary complex, with courtyards, chapels, and ceremonial structures. The Step Pyramid announced to the world that Egypt had entered a new era of monumentality. Symbolism of the Step Pyramid. The shape of the Step Pyramid was deeply symbolic. Its ascending terraces represented a stairway to the sky, reflecting myths of creation in which the primeval mound rose from the waters of chaos. By building a pyramid, Djoser's architects were recreating creation itself, affirming the king's role as guarantor of order and life. For Egyptians, the pyramid was not simply a tomb but a cosmic symbol. Its permanence reflected eternity, its shape echoed divine ascent, its scale proclaimed the greatness of the king. The complex at Saqqara. The Step Pyramid was not alone. It stood at the center of a vast complex enclosed by a limestone wall. Within the enclosure were temples for rituals, chapels for offerings, and courtyards for ceremonies. The design reflected both religious belief and political power, creating a sacred landscape where the king's eternal cult could be maintained. Our citizen from Athens might have seen the Acropolis as a center of sacred life. Here, the step pyramid complex served a similar role for Egypt's kingship. It was both burial and sanctuary, tomb and temple. Influence on later builders. The step pyramid inspired generations of architects. It demonstrated that stone could be used on a massive scale, that labor could be organized to build structures of unprecedented size, and that tombs could rise upward as symbols of divine kingship. Later kings experimented with pyramid shapes, refining techniques, testing new designs. The mastaba had given birth to a new form, the pyramid, that would dominate Egyptian architecture for centuries. Reflection on innovation. The leap from mastaba to pyramid was not inevitable. It required vision, courage, and innovation. Imhotep, remembered by later Egyptians as a sage and even deified as a god of wisdom, was the genius who made it possible. His step pyramid stands not only as Djoser's tomb but as a monument to human imagination. From mud brick benches to towering stone steps, Egypt had entered a new architectural age. The pyramid was born, and with it, a tradition that would culminate in the wonders of Giza. Closing image. Picture Saqqara in the days of Djoser. The step pyramid rises above the desert, gleaming in white limestone, its steps ascending toward the sky. Around it, priests perform rituals, courtyards echo with chants, offerings are laid at chapels. For the people of Egypt, it is not only the tomb of a king but the staircase of eternity. Looking ahead. In the next part of our journey, we will follow Imhotep's legacy into the experiments of Sneferu, the great innovator of the 4th dynasty, who perfected the art of pyramid building with the bent pyramid and the red pyramid, paving the way for Khufu's Great Pyramid. To understand the Great Pyramids of Giza, we must pause at Saqqara, where, more than 4.5 millennia ago, a king and his architect changed the course of history. Here, in a dusty plateau overlooking the Nile Valley, the world's first true pyramid rose from the desert. It was called the Step Pyramid, and it was the vision of Imhotep, chief architect and priest of Pharaoh Djoser. This was no ordinary tomb. It was an experiment in form and material, a bold departure from the mastabas of earlier kings. With it, Egypt entered the age of stone architecture, creating a monument that not only reshaped the landscape but also redefined what it meant to be a king, a god, and eternal. In this episode, we will immerse ourselves in the world of Djoser and Imhotep, the Egypt of the 3rd dynasty, the leap from mud brick to limestone, the symbolism encoded in the pyramid's form, and the sprawling funerary complex that surrounded it. Together, these innovations would echo through the centuries, influencing every pyramid that followed. Egypt in the 3rd dynasty. Around 2650 BCE, Egypt was still young as a unified kingdom. A few centuries earlier, kings of the 1st dynasty had ruled from Abydos, establishing traditions of divine kingship and royal burials. By Djoser's time, the capital had shifted north to Memphis, near the Fertile Delta, making Saqqara the natural burial ground for kings. Society was becoming more complex. Agricultural surpluses from the Nile supported specialized labor, scribes, priests, craftsmen. Trade reached into the Sinai and Nubia, bringing copper, gold, and exotic goods. Kingship was growing more centralized, and with it, the need for monuments that reflected stability and permanence. Into this world stepped Djoser, remembered as a ruler who sought to embody his divine role not only in life but in death. And at his side was Imhotep. Imhotep, architect, priest, visionary. Imhotep was more than an architect. He was a priest of Heliopolis, a physician, a scribe, and a counselor to the king. Later generations revered him as a sage, and by the late period he was worshipped as a god of wisdom and healing. His fame endured long after the pyramids themselves began to crumble. His genius lay in vision, the ability to see not just what was, but what could be. Where others saw mud-brick mastabas, he saw a structure that could rise toward the heavens. Where others saw temporary material, he saw permanence in stone. Imhotep was the first to think of stone not only as a facing but as the very body of a building. It was Imhotep who proposed to Djoser a tomb unlike any other, a tomb of steps, each mastaba stacked upon another, reaching upward as a symbolic stairway to the sky. The Step Pyramid at Saqqara. At its heart, the Step Pyramid is simple, 6 stacked mastabas of decreasing size, forming a structure 200 feet high. But simplicity belies ambition. Never before had Egyptians attempted to quarry, transport, and set so much stone on such a scale. The pyramid began as a single mastaba, but Imhotep expanded the design several times, enlarging its base and adding successive layers until it became a true step pyramid. The result was a monument that dominated the Saqqara Plateau, visible for miles across the desert. Its outer surface was clad in gleaming white limestone, polished smooth. In the sun, it shone like a beacon. To approach it was to feel the presence of divine eternity, embodied in stone. Symbolism of the steps. Why steps? Why not smooth sides, as at Giza centuries later? The answer lies in symbolism. The Egyptians imagined the king's soul ascending to the heavens, joining the sun god Ra in his daily journey across the sky. The steps formed a cosmic staircase, a bridge between earth and heaven. The pyramid also echoed the primeval mound of creation, the first land to rise from the waters of chaos in Egyptian myth. By building a pyramid, Imhotep recreated creation itself, affirming Djoser's role as maintainer of cosmic order. Thus, the Step Pyramid was more than a tomb. It was a theological statement, a stone hymn to eternity. The funerary complex. The Step Pyramid did not stand alone. It was part of a vast 36-acre funerary complex, enclosed by a limestone wall with 14 false gates and 1 true entrance. Within lay courtyards, temples, shrines, and chapels. There was the South Court, used for the said festival, a ritual of royal renewal. There were dummy chapels, symbolic buildings that represented shrines from across Egypt. There was a mortuary temple where priests made daily offerings to sustain the king's spirit. The entire complex was designed to serve the eternal cult of Djoser. It was a city for the dead, a mirror of the living city of Memphis, built to ensure that the king's presence endured forever. The underground world. Beneath the Step Pyramid lies a labyrinth of tunnels, shafts, and chambers, extending for miles. At the heart is the burial chamber, built of granite, where Djoser's body was interred. The walls of some chambers were decorated with blue faience tiles, imitating reed mats, perhaps to create the illusion of a palace underground. Storerooms held thousands of stone vessels, some inscribed with the names of earlier kings, linking Djoser to his ancestors. This underground palace reflected Egyptian belief that the king lived on in death, ruling from beneath the earth as he had in life. The pyramid above symbolized ascent to the heavens, while the chambers below provided continuity in the underworld. Together, they encompassed the totality of existence. Engineering achievements. Building the Step Pyramid required innovations in quarrying, transport, and organization. Stone had to be cut into blocks, dragged across the desert, and fitted precisely. Workers used copper chisels, dolerite pounders, and wooden sledges. Ramps and levers moved the blocks into place. Tens of thousands of laborers, farmers during flood season, skilled craftsmen year-round, were organized into crews. Overseers directed their work, scribes recorded supplies, priests supervised rituals. The project was both a technical and administrative triumph, showing that Egypt could mobilize resources on a scale never before seen. This organization would prove essential for the pyramids that followed. Imhotep and Djoser demonstrated not only what was possible in stone but what was possible in human coordination. Impact and legacy. The Step Pyramid transformed Egyptian architecture. It set the precedent for monumental stone building, for pyramid form, for complexes that combined tomb, temple, and symbol. Later kings of the 4th dynasty would refine the idea, smoothing the steps, enlarging the scale, perfecting the geometry. But all of them owed their inspiration to Imhotep's bold leap. For Egyptians, the Step Pyramid became a model of eternity. For us, it is the beginning of the story of the Great Pyramids, the first chapter in a saga of human ambition. Reflection. To stand at Saqqara today is to feel the weight of beginnings. The step pyramid rises, weathered but proud, surrounded by ruins of chapels and walls. It is less perfect than Khufu's Great Pyramid, less massive than Sneferu's Red Pyramid, but it is the first, the spark that lit the fire of pyramid building. Imhotep's vision turned mudbrick into limestone, tombs into mountains, ideas into eternal stone. Without him, there would be no Giza, no wonder of the ancient world. Closing image. Picture Djoser's complex in its glory. Priests in white robes process through limestone courtyards, carrying offerings. The step pyramid gleams under the sun, its steps rising like a stairway to the sky. Beneath, in chambers of blue tiles, the king rests, his ka sustained by rituals above. Around it all, the desert stretches, silent witness to a revolution in stone. Looking ahead. In the next part of our journey, we will move from Saqqara to Dashur, following Sneferu, the great builder of the 4th dynasty, whose experiments with the bent pyramid and red pyramid perfected the art of pyramid construction and paved the way for Khufu's Great Pyramid at Giza. When Djoser's step pyramid rose at Saqqara, it was unlike anything the world had seen before. Yet it was not the final form of Egypt's most famous monuments. The pyramid was still a staircase, its sides uneven, its shape symbolic but unfinished. The dream of a true pyramid, smooth-sided, symmetrical, a shining mountain of stone rising from the desert, remained unrealized. That dream would belong to Sneferu, the first king of Egypt's 4th dynasty, who reigned around 2613 to 2589 BCE. Sneferu was not only a ruler but the greatest builder in Egyptian history, remembered for raising not one, but at least 3 pyramids, each an experiment, each a step toward perfection. Through trial, error, and innovation, Sneferu transformed the pyramid from step stair to gleaming triangle, paving the way for his son Khufu to build the Great Pyramid at Giza. In this part of our journey, we follow Sneferu to Dashur, a royal necropolis south of Cairo, where his 2 most famous monuments still stand, the Bent Pyramid and the Red Pyramid. Together, they tell the story of ambition, miscalculation, adaptation, and triumph. Sneferu, the Builder King. Sneferu was known to his people as a benevolent and ambitious ruler. Later traditions portrayed him as a just king, generous with his subjects, yet determined to leave behind monuments worthy of divine kingship. His reign marked the flowering of the Old Kingdom, the period often called Egypt's Age of the Pyramids. He inherited the legacy of Djoser and Imhotep, but he sought to surpass them. Where Djoser had stacked steps, Sneferu envisioned smooth slopes. Where Saqqara had been an experiment, Sneferu wanted completion. To him, the pyramid was not merely a tomb but a cosmic statement, a perfect triangle reaching toward the heavens, a reflection of the sun's rays descending upon the earth. The Midam Pyramid, first attempt. Sneferu's first project was at Midam, a site south of Saqqara. Here, construction began as a step pyramid, likely initiated by his predecessor Huni. Sneferu expanded it, attempting to convert it into a true pyramid by filling in the steps and adding a smooth outer casing. The result, however, was unstable. At some point, perhaps during construction, perhaps after, much of the outer casing collapsed, leaving a strange tower-like core that today rises in isolation, surrounded by heaps of rubble. Though it failed, Midam was a crucial experiment. It demonstrated both the challenges of transforming a step pyramid into a smooth-sided one and the ambition of Sneferu to push beyond tradition. It was a laboratory in stone, and its lessons would shape his later work. The Bent Pyramid, ambition meets reality. From Midam, Sneferu moved north to Dashur, where he began a pyramid of unprecedented scale. Its base stretched 620 feet on each side, its intended height nearly 340 feet. Unlike earlier monuments, it was designed from the start as a true pyramid, with smooth sides rising at a steep angle of 54 degrees. But as construction advanced, problems appeared. Cracks formed in the interior chambers, the weight of the upper stones pressed dangerously on the lower levels. Builders feared collapse. To save the monument, they changed the angle midway, reducing it to 43 degrees. The result is the unique shape we see today, the bent pyramid, rising with sharp slopes that suddenly change, giving it a broken appearance. Though imperfect, the bent pyramid was a marvel. It preserved much of its original casing of polished limestone, allowing us to glimpse how pyramids once gleamed in the sun. It also represented adaptation, proof that Egyptians could respond to engineering crises with ingenuity. For Sneferu, however, it was not enough. He sought perfection. The Red Pyramid, triumph in stone. Not far from the Bent Pyramid, Sneferu ordered another construction, the Red Pyramid, named for the reddish hue of its limestone core. Learning from the failures at Midim and the Bent Pyramid, architects adopted a more moderate slope of 43 degrees from the start, ensuring stability. The result was Egypt's first successful true pyramid, standing 344 feet tall with sides stretching over 720 feet. For the first time, a pyramid rose in smooth, symmetrical perfection, a triangle of stone that embodied the vision Sneferu had pursued. The Red Pyramid was clad in white limestone, now mostly stripped, but in its prime it shone brilliantly in the desert sun. To approach it was to see geometry made divine, a flawless mountain of stone, ordered by human hands, aligned with the eternal cosmos. Symbolism of the true pyramid. Why was the smooth-sided pyramid so important? For Egyptians, its triangular form symbolized the rays of the sun, descending from the sky to touch the earth. The pharaoh, buried within, could ascend along those rays to join Ra, the sun god, in his eternal cycle. The pyramid also echoed the primeval mound, but now perfected into geometry. Where the step pyramid represented a stairway, the true pyramid represented light itself, pure, eternal, cosmic. With the Red Pyramid, Sneferu gave Egypt not only a tomb but a symbol of kingship perfected. Engineering lessons. Sneferu's projects revealed the trial-and-error nature of pyramid building. At Midim, unstable casing taught the danger of altering design midway. At the Bent Pyramid, shifting angles taught the importance of weight distribution. At the Red Pyramid, lessons were consolidated into success. The scale of labor was immense. Thousands of workers quarried limestone, shaped blocks, dragged them on sledges, and hauled them up ramps. Villages near Dashur housed these laborers, providing food, beer, and medical care. The state's ability to organize such manpower reflected Egypt's growing power and centralization. Sneferu's legacy. Sneferu left behind 3 pyramids, the collapsed ruin of Midim, the peculiar beauty of the Bent Pyramid, and the triumph of the Red Pyramid. Together, they form a trilogy of experimentation, failure, and perfection. His reign transformed pyramid building from tentative experiment to confident art. Without Sneferu, there would be no Great Pyramid of Khufu. He demonstrated not only that smooth-sided pyramids were possible, but how to build them securely, at scale, and with enduring stability. Later generations remembered him as the greatest builder, his monuments still dominating the Dashur Plateau. His spirit, enshrined in stone, marked the beginning of Egypt's golden age of pyramid construction. Reflection. Sneferu's pyramids remind us that greatness often emerges from failure. The rubble of Midim, the awkward slope of the Bent Pyramid, and the perfection of the Red Pyramid tell a story of persistence, adaptation, and ambition. They show us that even in antiquity, engineering was a process of trial and correction, guided by vision and determination. Standing today in Dashur, one sees them still, the Bent Pyramid with its odd, human imperfection, and the Red Pyramid with its serene, geometric majesty. Together, they whisper of a king who dared to dream of eternity and who, through stone, achieved it. Closing image. Picture Dashur at sunset. The Bent Pyramid casts a crooked shadow, its angles broken but enduring. Nearby, the Red Pyramid glows in red light, its sides perfect, its presence calm and commanding. In the desert silence, they stand as testimony to one king's journey from failure to triumph, from imperfection to perfection. Looking ahead. In the next part of our journey, we will turn to Khufu, Sneferu's son, whose ambition surpassed even his father's. With the lessons of Dashur in hand, Khufu set out to build the greatest pyramid of all, the Great Pyramid of Giza, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The desert plateau at Giza stretches above the Nile Valley, a broad shelf of limestone overlooking fertile fields below. For centuries, Egyptians had buried their kings at Saqqara and Dashur, each tomb greater than the last, culminating in Sneferu's triumph at the Red Pyramid. Yet one man, inheriting this legacy, dreamed of something even more ambitious, something so vast, so precise, so eternal, that it would eclipse all who came before him. That man was Khufu, son of Sneferu, known to the Greeks as Cheops. Khufu reigned around 2589 to 2566 BCE, and his vision became the Great Pyramid of Giza, the largest and most iconic of all pyramids. Standing nearly 480 feet tall in its original form, with a base covering 13 acres and built of over 2 million stone blocks, it was, and remains, an architectural wonder. For thousands of years, it was the tallest human-made structure on Earth, unmatched until medieval cathedrals pierced the skies. But how did Khufu conceive of such a project? What inspired him to push beyond the achievements of his father? And what did the Great Pyramid mean, not only as a tomb, but as a statement of kingship, faith, and eternity? In this part of our journey, we explore the vision of Khufu, the dream that gave birth to the greatest of all pyramids. Inheriting a legacy. Khufu was the son of Sneferu, the builder king who raised more stone monuments than any pharaoh before him. Sneferu had proven that smooth-sided pyramids could be built securely and on a grand scale. He left his son not only models of construction but the organizational structures, crews of laborers, overseers, quarrying techniques, and administrative systems that made large-scale building possible. Khufu inherited this legacy of ambition and innovation. Yet he sought not merely to continue it but to surpass it. Where his father had raised 3 pyramids, Khufu would raise one so perfect and colossal that it would stand as the supreme symbol of kingship for millennia. Choosing Giza. Why Giza? Several factors made this plateau ideal. The limestone bedrock was strong and level, capable of bearing immense weight. Quarries nearby provided abundant building material. The site overlooked Memphis, the capital, symbolically linking the pyramid with the seat of power. And the plateau offered a commanding view of the Nile Valley, ensuring the pyramid would dominate the landscape. To build here was to proclaim permanence. While Saqqara and Dashur had been stages of experimentation, Giza would be the grand stage of mastery. Designing the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid was designed with extraordinary precision. Each side of its square base measured about 755 feet, aligned almost perfectly to the cardinal directions. The orientation is so accurate that modern engineers marvel at it. The error is less than a fraction of a degree. Its height of 480 feet made it not only the tallest pyramid but the tallest human-made structure for over 3,800 years. Its slope of 51.5 degrees struck a perfect balance between height and stability, embodying both ambition and engineering wisdom. Inside, the pyramid contained a complex system of passages and chambers: the descending passage, the ascending passage, the queen's chamber, the grand gallery, and the king's chamber with its granite sarcophagus. Above the king's chamber, relieving chambers distributed weight, preventing collapse. This design was more than architecture, it was cosmology in stone, a symbolic map of the pharaoh's journey to eternity. The workforce. Khufu's vision required labor on an unprecedented scale. Tens of thousands of workers were organized into crews, subdivided into smaller teams, each responsible for specific tasks: quarrying, transporting, hauling, and placing stone. Contrary to old myths of slaves, evidence suggests the builders were skilled laborers, often farmers working during the Nile flood season when fields lay underwater. Workers' villages found near Giza reveal homes, bakeries, breweries, and medical facilities, showing that laborers were fed, cared for, and organized with remarkable efficiency. The project was less an act of oppression than of national devotion, a collective offering to the gods and to eternity. Tools and techniques. The vision of Khufu pushed tools and techniques to their limits. Copper chisels shaped softer limestone, while dolerite pounders broke harder granite. Wooden sledges dragged blocks across the desert, lubricated by water to reduce friction. Ramps of mud brick and limestone debris allowed stones to be hauled upward. The precision of the construction remains astonishing. Joints between stones are so tight that a knife blade cannot slip between them. The leveling of the base is accurate within inches across 13 acres. Such mastery speaks not of mystery but of relentless experimentation, training, and discipline. religious meaning. For Khufu, the Great Pyramid was not only a tomb but a stairway to the heavens. Its shape symbolized the rays of the sun, descending from Ra, the sun god, who by this time had become central to Egyptian religion. The pyramid aligned with the stars, its passages oriented toward specific constellations associated with eternity and kingship. Inside, the chambers reflected myths of rebirth and ascent. To lie within the pyramid was to lie at the axis of heaven and earth, to rise as a star among the gods. The Great Pyramid was thus a cosmic machine, designed not merely to house a body but to transform a king into an eternal deity. Political statement. Beyond religion, the Great Pyramid was also a political statement. To raise such a monument demonstrated the pharaoh's power to mobilize the state, command labor, and marshal resources. It proclaimed that under Khufu's reign, Egypt was prosperous, stable, and united. It also reminded subjects of the divine nature of kingship. The pyramid was not just for Khufu. It was for Egypt itself, a sign that order prevailed, that eternity was secured, that the gods favored their king. All through the ages. Even in antiquity, Khufu's pyramid was legendary. Greek travelers like Herodotus wrote of it with awe, though often repeating exaggerated tales of cruelty or impossibility. To them, it seemed a wonder beyond comprehension. For centuries, it remained the largest building ever made, inspiring admiration, fear, and endless speculation. When the Greeks listed the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Great Pyramid was the oldest, and the only one that still survives. Reflection. Khufu's vision was both personal and universal. Personally, it was his tomb, his stairway to the gods, his eternal home. Universally, it was Egypt's greatest symbol, a proclamation of cosmic order, divine kingship, and human ambition. Standing today at its base, one still feels that vision. The stones are weathered, the casing mostly gone, yet the immensity overwhelms. It is as if Khufu whispers across 4,500 years, I am eternal. I am divine. I endure. Closing image. Picture the Great Pyramid in its prime. Its sides gleam with white limestone, reflecting the sun like a mirror. At its base, priests perform rituals, incense rises, and processions approach along paved causeways. Laborers return to their villages, exhausted but proud, knowing they have built a mountain of eternity. Above, the desert glows in golden light, and the pyramid stands, silent and eternal, embodying Khufu's vision. Looking ahead. In the next part of our journey, we will look closely at the planning and precision behind the Great Pyramid, how surveyors aligned it to the stars, how architects designed its chambers, and how mathematics and astronomy shaped one of history's greatest achievements. The Great Pyramid of Khufu did not rise by accident. It was not the result of mere brute force or random piling of stone. Beneath its millions of blocks lay a framework of careful thought, mathematics, surveying, astronomy, and geometry. Long before the first block was cut, architects and priests spent years preparing, measuring, and aligning. To build a wonder of the world required not only muscle but mind. In this part of our journey, we step into the world of ancient Egyptian planners and surveyors, the hidden figures whose knowledge turned vision into reality. We will see how they chose the site, leveled the ground, set the base, and aligned the structure with uncanny accuracy to the stars and cardinal points. This is the story of the invisible blueprint beneath the stones. Choosing the site. The plateau at Giza was not chosen by chance. Its limestone bedrock provided a stable foundation, far stronger than the sandy soils of the valley. Its elevation ensured the pyramid would dominate the horizon, visible for miles along the Nile. Proximity to the river made transport of stone possible, as blocks could be floated on boats to nearby docks. Symbolism also mattered. Giza faced Heliopolis, the great center of sun worship, across the Nile. By building here, Khufu aligned his pyramid with the rising sun, reinforcing its solar symbolism. The plateau thus combined practical strength with cosmic resonance. Laying out the base. The first challenge was to prepare the base. Surveyors cleared and leveled a 13-acre area, ensuring a foundation accurate to within inches across the entire surface. How did they achieve such precision without modern instruments? Archaeologists believe they used simple but ingenious tools, plumb lines, sighting rods, and water-filled trenches that created perfectly horizontal reference levels. By flooding shallow channels and marking water lines, they could establish a level surface across vast distances. The result was astonishing. The base of the Great Pyramid deviates less than 2 inches in level, a feat that rivals modern surveying. Aligning to the cardinal points. Next came alignment. The pyramid is oriented almost perfectly to true north, its sides facing the cardinal directions with errors of less than 0.05 degrees. This accuracy astonishes modern engineers. How did the Egyptians achieve it? The answer lies in the stars. Egyptian priests, skilled in astronomy, likely observed the circumpolar stars, the imperishables that never set but circled endlessly around the North Star. By watching when 2 stars aligned vertically, they could mark true north with remarkable accuracy. Another method involved tracking the sun's shadow at equinox, marking east and west directly. Whether by stars or sun, the result was the same, a pyramid aligned not to chance but to the cosmos itself. Mathematical proportions. The pyramid's dimensions reflect both practical and symbolic choices. Its slope of about 51.5 degrees created a ratio close to 14:11, balancing height and stability. Some scholars suggest the ratio approximates pi, linking the circle and square, heaven and earth. Others see approximations of the golden ratio. Whether intentional or not, the pyramid embodies harmony of form, a balance of geometry that reflects Egyptian reverence for order. The design is not only functional but symbolic, a union of mathematics and metaphysics. Designing the interior. Inside, planners laid out a complex system of passages and chambers. The descending passage cut deep into bedrock, leading to a subterranean chamber. The ascending passage rose to the Queen's Chamber and the Grand Gallery, a vaulted corridor 153 feet long and 28 feet high. At its end lay the King's Chamber, built of granite blocks weighing up to 80 tons, transported from Aswan 500 miles away. Above the King's Chamber, 5 relieving chambers of granite distributed weight, preventing collapse. This system reflected deep understanding of structural stress. Architects anticipated dangers and designed solutions that kept the chamber intact for millennia. The symbolism of space. The interior was not only functional but symbolic. The Queen's Chamber may have represented rebirth, the King's Chamber resurrection, the passages the journey of the soul. Shafts aligned to stars allowed the pharaoh's spirit to ascend to Orion and the circumpolar stars, joining the eternal heavens. Thus, the pyramid was both tomb and cosmological map, guiding the king's journey beyond death. Its geometry was not mere calculation but theology expressed in stone. Organization of labor. Planning also meant organizing labor. Crews were divided into teams with names like Friends of Khufu or Drunkards of Menkaure, competing in spirit. Records suggest a workforce of tens of thousands, rotating seasonally, supported by supply chains of food, clothing, and tools. Scribes recorded daily rations, overseers directed work, priests supervised rituals. The pyramid was as much an administrative achievement as an architectural one. The invisible blueprint. When we look at the Great Pyramid, we see stone. But beneath it lies an invisible structure of thought, measurements, alignments, calculations, and logistics. Without this hidden architecture, the visible one could not exist. The pyramid stands as testimony not only to human muscle but to human mind. Its perfection is the result of surveyors with ropes and rods, priests watching stars, scribes recording grain, and overseers directing men. It is a wonder not of mystery but of meticulous planning. Reflection. The Great Pyramid reminds us that great monuments are born not only from ambition but from preparation. Khufu's vision could only be realized because of the invisible labor of planners, mathematicians, and astronomers. Their work, though forgotten by name, endures in every aligned stone, every level corner, every passage that still holds. In honoring Khufu, we must also honor the anonymous minds who turned his dream into stone. Closing image. Picture Giza before construction. Surveyors mark lines with ropes, priests sight stars, laborers dig channels filled with water to test level. By torchlight, scribes record measurements. Slowly, an invisible pyramid of numbers and lines takes shape in the sand, a ghost that will soon become stone. The wonder begins long before the first block is laid. Looking ahead. In the next part of our journey, we will turn from planners to people, the workforce that made Khufu's vision possible, the thousands of laborers and craftsmen whose sweat and skill turned blueprints into reality. When people first look upon the Great Pyramid, they often ask, who built this? For centuries, myths and misconceptions have clouded the answer. Ancient Greek writers like Herodotus spoke of tens of thousands of slaves toiling under cruel masters. Later traditions imagined prisoners of war, captives forced to drag blocks under the whip. Even in modern times, films and stories often portray pyramids as monuments of oppression, built on human suffering. But archaeology tells a different story. Excavations around Giza have uncovered workers' villages, bakeries, breweries, and cemeteries, revealing a far more nuanced picture. The pyramids were not the work of slaves in chains but of a vast, organized labor force, farmers, craftsmen, and specialists, mobilized seasonally, supported by the state, and motivated by a mix of duty, religion, and pride. In this part of our journey, we step away from the stones themselves to meet the people who hauled them, carved them, and set them in place. They were the unsung builders of eternity, the human heartbeat behind the stone mountain of Khufu. Farmers turned builders. Egypt's agricultural cycle made pyramid construction possible. Each year, the Nile flooded, covering fields with water and silt. During these months, farming halted, leaving thousands of peasants idle. Rather than let this labor go unused, the state conscripted farmers for work on royal projects. For 3 or 4 months each year, these men left their villages and traveled to Giza, where they joined crews of pyramid builders. When the flood receded, they returned home to sow and harvest. In this way, pyramid building did not cripple agriculture but complemented it, harnessing seasonal rhythms to serve the pharaoh. Skilled craftsmen. Alongside farmers were skilled craftsmen, stonecutters, masons, carpenters, metalworkers. These men worked year-round, forming the backbone of construction. They cut limestone blocks from quarries, shaped granite slabs from Aswan, built wooden sledges and copper chisels, repaired tools, and oversaw quality. Craftsmen often lived in permanent quarters near the pyramid site, passing down skills from generation to generation. Their work reveals deep knowledge of stone, geometry, and engineering. Without them, the farmer's muscle would have been useless. Organization of labor. The workforce was divided into teams called crews, each consisting of about 2,000 men. Each crew was further subdivided into smaller units, gangs, fills, and squads, each with its own name and identity. Graffiti left on pyramid blocks reveal names like Friends of Khufu or Drunkards of Menkaure, showing pride and camaraderie. This organization fostered competition between crews, spurring productivity. Overseers monitored progress, scribes kept records of rations, and priests supervised rituals. The pyramid site was not chaos but a highly regimented system, where thousands of men worked in harmony toward a single goal. Food and rations. Feeding such a workforce required immense resources. Archaeologists have found remains of vast bakeries and breweries at Giza, capable of producing thousands of loaves of bread and gallons of beer daily. Beer was the staple drink, safer than water and nourishing. Meat, too, was abundant. Bones of cattle, sheep, and goats suggest workers were fed diets richer than those of ordinary peasants. Feeding the laborers was both practical and symbolic. Strong, well-fed workers built better, and good rations showed the king's generosity. Housing the builders. Excavations at the so-called workers' village reveal rows of modest barracks where laborers slept. Each housed around 40 men, sleeping side by side on mats. Nearby were larger houses for overseers and administrators. The village also had bakeries, breweries, storage rooms, and even medical facilities. Skeletons show evidence of injuries, broken bones, dislocations, but also evidence of healing, suggesting workers received medical care. Far from being disposable slaves, they were valued participants in the project. Pride and motivation. Why did men build the pyramids? Several factors motivated them. Duty to the pharaoh was paramount, the king was seen as divine, and working on his tomb was a sacred service. Religion also played a role. To contribute to the pyramid was to participate in ensuring cosmic order and the afterlife of the king. But pride was also powerful. Crews left graffiti boasting of their accomplishments. Families remembered ancestors who had worked at Giza. To be part of pyramid building was to be part of history, a bond that gave ordinary men a sense of immortality alongside their king. Women and families. Though heavy labor was men's work, women likely played roles in supporting the workforce, baking bread, brewing beer, weaving cloth. Children may have run errands, carried water, or tended animals. Families of permanent craftsmen may have lived near the site, creating a community sustained by pyramid construction. Thus, the pyramid was not only built by men but by households, villages, and the entire nation. It was a collective effort that united Egypt in devotion to the pharaoh. Cemeteries of the builders. Near the workers' village at Giza, archaeologists discovered modest tombs, simple rectangular graves with pottery, tools, and food offerings. These were the graves of the pyramid builders themselves. Their burial so close to the pyramids of kings suggests honor. They were not slaves discarded in anonymity but valued laborers, remembered and provided for in death. Some tombs bear names and titles, reminding us that behind every block was a human life, with family, hope, and belief in eternity. Myths of slavery. The image of slaves building the pyramids is persistent but misleading. While Egypt certainly had slaves, evidence from Giza points to a workforce of citizens, not captives. Labor was compulsory but not degrading. It was a form of corvée service, akin to taxation. The myth of slave labor, especially the notion that Israelites built the pyramids, arose much later, shaped by biblical narratives and popular imagination. Archaeology, however, restores dignity to the actual builders, ordinary Egyptians who labored with pride, not chains. Reflection. The Great Pyramid was not built by giants or aliens, nor by faceless slaves whipped into submission. It was built by the hands of farmers, craftsmen, and families, tens of thousands of ordinary Egyptians who, together, created something extraordinary. Their labor was hard, their lives not easy, but their contribution endures in every stone that still stands. In honoring the pyramid, we must also honor them, the nameless many who gave their sweat, strength, and skill to eternity. Closing image. Picture the workers' village at dawn. Smoke rises from bakeries, the smell of bread and beer fills the air. Crews gather, joking, stretching, preparing for labor. Overseers call names, scribes tally supplies. As the sun rises, men march toward the plateau, ropes in hand, ready to haul stone. Each step, each strain, each breath brings Khufu's dream closer to reality. Looking ahead. In the next part of our journey, we will examine the tools and technology the builders used, how copper, wood, and stone were shaped into instruments capable of raising mountains, and how ingenuity overcame the limits of the age. When we stand before the Great Pyramid, its size seems so immense that we instinctively imagine advanced tools, lost technologies, or even otherworldly help. How could a civilization over 4,500 years ago, with no iron, no pulleys, no wheels suited for heavy loads, raise millions of stone blocks into place? Surely they must have had secrets now forgotten. Yet the truth, revealed by archaeology, is both more humble and more extraordinary. The pyramids were built not with futuristic machines but with the simplest of tools, chisels of copper, hammers of dolerite, sledges of wood, ropes of plant fiber. With patience, organization, and relentless labor, the Egyptians used the tools available to them to achieve miracles. The genius lay not in unknown technologies but in ingenuity, persistence, and the coordination of thousands of skilled hands. In this part of our journey, we look closely at the instruments of pyramid building, the chisels, pounders, sledges, and ropes, and how they were used. We will see how copper and stone, wood and water, combine to cut, move, and set the blocks of eternity. Copper, the metal of the age. The Egyptians of Khufu's time lived in the Chalcolithic world, the age of copper. Bronze, an alloy of copper and tin, would not be used widely until centuries later, and iron would not appear in Egypt until even later still. Copper was soft compared to stone, but it was the best metal available, and the Egyptians used it with skill. Copper chisels were employed to cut softer limestone blocks, shaping them into smooth faces. For harder stones like granite, copper tools were less effective, but with persistence and sand as an abrasive, they still managed. Chisels had to be resharpened constantly, and workshops near Giza likely worked day and night to keep tools ready. The Egyptians imported copper from the Sinai Peninsula, organizing expeditions to mines and smelting or into usable form. The very existence of the pyramids depended on these supply chains of metal. Dolerite pounders. For granite, quarried from Aswan and used in the king's chamber, the Egyptians employed dolerite pounders. Dolerite is a hard, dense stone, tougher than granite itself. Workers would pound granite blocks with dolerite balls, wearing depressions into the surface until cracks formed and slabs could be split away. This was backbreaking work. Imagine teams of men striking stone day after day, the sound of pounding echoing through the quarries. Yet it worked, and the results, massive granite beams weighing up to 80 tons, still rest inside the pyramid, placed with astonishing precision. Wooden sledges. Once cut, blocks had to be moved. For this, Egyptians used wooden sledges, essentially large runners onto which stone blocks were loaded. Teams of men pulled the sledges with ropes, dragging blocks across the desert surface. Reliefs from tombs show men pouring water onto the sand before the sledges. Modern experiments confirm that wet sand reduces friction dramatically, making it possible for fewer men to haul heavier loads. This simple trick reveals Egyptian practical genius, not complex machines, but careful use of nature's properties. Ropes and rollers. Ropes made of papyrus or palm fiber were essential. They bound blocks to sledges, secured loads, and allowed teams to pull in unison. Rope making itself was a specialized craft, with workshops producing thick, durable cords capable of bearing tons of strain. For smaller movements, wooden rollers may have been used, though for heavy block sledges were more reliable. The combination of sledges, ropes, and ramps allowed Egyptians to move blocks that still astonish us today. Levels and plumb lines. Precision required measuring tools. Egyptians used plumb lines, strings with weights, to establish verticals, and A-frames with plumb lines to ensure right angles. For leveling, they used water-filled trenches or sighting instruments to ensure surfaces were even. With these simple tools, they achieved alignments so precise that modern laser surveys confirm deviations of only fractions of a degree. The builders may not have had modern mathematics, but they had geometry in practice, applied with care and repetition. Levers and ramps. To raise blocks into place, workers used levers of wood to pry and adjust, inching stones into perfect alignment. Larger lifts required ramps, massive earthen constructions of mud brick, rubble, and limestone chippings. The exact form of ramps remains debated. Some argue for straight ramps extending outward, others for zigzagging ramps along the sides, still others for internal ramps spiraling within the pyramid. But whatever the form, the principle was simple: sledges hauled blocks upward, levers adjusted them, ropes secured them. The power of repetition. What makes the pyramid incredible is not hidden technology but repetition. Each block followed the same process: cut, hauled, lifted, set. Repeated 2 million times. Day after day, year after year, for decades. The genius of the Egyptians was not in inventing a machine that did the work for them, but in organizing human labor so that small, simple tools could achieve immense results. Evidence from workers' marks. Blocks of the Great Pyramid bear red marks, notations made by work crews. Some record measurements, others the names of teams. They show us the human presence, the scribbled traces of men who hauled and placed the stones. These marks remind us that the pyramid was built not by machines but by hands, guided by ropes, sledges, and simple tools. The illusion of mystery. Why, then, do so many still imagine lost technologies or alien builders? Perhaps because the achievement seems too great for human hands. But the evidence of tools, quarries, and workers' villages tells another story. The pyramids are not mysteries beyond comprehension, they are monuments to human ingenuity, persistence, and the power of simple tools used wisely. Reflection. Standing before the Great Pyramid, we must resist the temptation to seek secrets where none exist. The wonder lies not in fantasy but in reality, in copper chisels worn down from use, in dolerite pounders cracked from labor, in ropes frayed from strain, in sledges grooved by stone. The tools were simple, but the results eternal. The Great Pyramid is proof that human beings, with vision and organization, can achieve what seems impossible, using nothing more than the simplest of instruments and the will to endure. Closing image. Picture a quarry near Giza. Men with copper chisels carve limestone blocks, sparks of stone flying with each strike. Others pound granite with dolerite, sweat running down their backs. Nearby, ropes coil on the ground, sledges wait to be loaded. Overseers shout orders, scribes record tallies. The air is filled with the sound of stone against stone. These are the tools of eternity. Looking ahead. In the next part of our journey, we will explore the quarrying and transport of stone, how millions of tons of limestone and granite were cut, moved, and delivered to the plateau, an achievement as logistical as it was architectural. The Great Pyramid was not made of ideas alone. Beneath its grandeur lies a staggering material reality, over 2.3 million blocks of stone, weighing an estimated 6.5 million tons in total. Some blocks were small enough to be dragged by a few men, others weighed as much as 80 tons and had to be transported hundreds of miles. To feed the pyramid's insatiable appetite, quarries and transport systems had to run like arteries, pumping stone from source to site with relentless rhythm. In this part of our journey, we leave the finished monument behind and follow the stones back to their origins, to the quarries of Giza, Tura, and Aswan, to boats on the Nile, and to sledges dragging blocks across desert sands. We will see not only how the Egyptians obtained so much stone but how they orchestrated one of the greatest logistical operations in human history. Local quarries at Giza. Much of the pyramid's core stone came from local quarries cut directly into the Giza plateau itself. Excavations show deep pits and trenches where workers hacked out limestone blocks, often leaving behind negative impressions where stones had been removed. This limestone was coarse and yellowish, not the fine white casing stone, but it was abundant and close at hand. Workers could cut blocks directly at the pyramid site, haul them only a short distance, and set them in place. Using local stone for the bulk of the pyramid greatly reduced transport needs. The proximity of these quarries meant that from the very first stages of construction, stone could flow directly into the pyramid's base like a steady river. Tura limestone, the gleaming casing. While local stone sufficed for the core, the casing stones, the smooth outer layer that once covered the pyramid, were made of fine white limestone from Tura, across the Nile from Giza. This stone, polished to a mirror-like finish, gave the pyramid its dazzling brilliance. Quarrying at Tura required cutting galleries into the cliffs, extracting massive slabs, and hauling them to the riverbank. From there, blocks were loaded onto boats and ferried across the Nile to docks near Giza. These casing stones were fitted with such precision that joints were almost invisible. Though most were stripped in later centuries, a few still survive near the base of Khafre's pyramid, giving us a glimpse of how Khufu's pyramid once shone like a beacon in the desert sun. Aswan granite, the king's chamber. The most challenging stone came from Aswan, 500 miles upriver, where red granite was quarried for the king's chamber and internal passages. Granite was harder than limestone, requiring dolerite pounders to cut. Blocks weighing up to 80 tons had to be freed, shaped, and transported immense distances. Moving such massive blocks required ingenuity. They were dragged to the Nile, loaded onto barges, floated downstream with the current, and offloaded at Giza. From there, they were hauled uphill to the pyramid plateau, a feat that still inspires awe. The granite beams in the king's chamber remain among the heaviest objects ever moved in the ancient world, testimony to Egyptian determination. Tools of quarrying. Quarrying limestone was done with copper chisels and wooden mallets. Workers chipped channels around blocks, then pried them free with wooden wedges. To split larger slabs, They drove wooden pegs into cracks and soaked them with water. As the wood swelled, the rock fractured. Granite, too hard for copper, was attacked with dolerite pounders. Stone balls swung again and again until depressions weakened the rock. Marks of these pounders can still be seen in Aswan quarries, silent echoes of ancient labor. Transport by Nile. The Nile was the highway of Egypt, and without it the pyramids would have been impossible. Boats carried stone from distant quarries to Giza, moving with the current downstream and sailing against it when needed. Reliefs show barges piled with blocks, men rowing, sails billowing. Recent discoveries of papyri at Wadi al-Jarf describe officials overseeing deliveries of Tura limestone to Giza, recording cargoes and timetables. These texts confirm what archaeologists suspected: the Nile was the artery feeding the pyramid. During the flood season, canals and harbors near Giza allowed boats to deliver blocks close to the site, minimizing overland hauling. Dragging across the desert. From river to plateau, blocks were moved on sledges dragged by teams of men. Tomb paintings depict this process clearly: rows of laborers pulling ropes, a man pouring water on the sand to reduce friction. Experiments show this could have the effort required. For uphill hauling, ramps of rubble and mudbrick were built, their surfaces lubricated with clay and water. The form of these ramps remains debated: straight, zigzagging, or spiraling, but their function was simple: to create a gradual incline so stones could be hauled upward. The rhythm of movement. Stone transport was relentless. Day after day, barges arrived at harbors, sledges creaked across ramps, and blocks were placed into waiting gaps. Scribes recorded tallies, overseers shouted orders, priests offered blessings. The movement of stone was like the beating of a heart, steady, unending, supplying the body of the pyramid with its lifeblood. Without this rhythm, construction would halt. With it, the pyramid rose layer by layer, stone by stone. Human and animal power. Though animals like oxen were used in agriculture, evidence suggests pyramid hauling relied mostly on human muscle. Teams of men pulling in unison could generate immense force, guided by overseers who coordinated chants and movements. This reliance on human power speaks to the organizational genius of Egypt, turning thousands of ordinary men into the engines of monumental construction. Storage and staging. Once delivered, stones were staged in storage yards near the pyramid. Some were roughly shaped at the quarry, others trimmed on site. Each block was then hauled up ramps to its designated position, guided into place with levers and ropes. This staging process required careful scheduling. Too many stones arriving at once would cause bottlenecks, too few would halt progress. Administrators balanced supply and demand with remarkable efficiency. Reflection. When we look at the Great Pyramid, we often see only the finished form, the polished sides and towering height. But beneath it lies the story of movement: stone cut from earth, floated on rivers, dragged across sand, raised into sky. It is a story of sweat and rhythm, of men straining at ropes, of sledges groaning, of ramps rising. The pyramid is not only a monument of stone but of motion, frozen in time. Every block tells a story of journey, from quarry to resting place, from earth to eternity. Closing image. Picture the Nile at dawn. Barges laden with limestone drift downstream, sails catching the breeze. At Giza, men unload blocks, lash them to sledges, and haul them toward the plateau. The sound of chanting guides their steps, the splash of water eases the sand. Slowly, steadily, stone flows like a river toward the pyramid, feeding its endless hunger. Looking ahead. In the next part of our journey, we will examine the ramps and lifting methods, the systems that allowed Egyptians to raise blocks higher and higher, until the pyramid stood as a mountain of stone. The Great Pyramid of Khufu is not only immense in scale but also vertical in challenge. A pyramid rises layer by layer, each course of stone higher than the last. Moving a block across flat ground is one thing. Raising it hundreds of feet into the air, aligning it with precision, is another. This was perhaps the greatest engineering obstacle the Egyptians faced, and one they solved with ingenuity, persistence, and coordination. In this part of our journey, we explore the means by which blocks were lifted, the ramps that grew with the pyramid, the levers that adjusted placement, and the systems that turned human muscle into upward force. Though the exact methods remain debated, archaeology and experiment allow us to reconstruct plausible solutions. The Great Pyramid's rise was not magic, it was method. The challenge of height. At the base, blocks could be moved with relative ease, hauled directly from quarry pits or dragged across short distances. But as the pyramid grew taller, the problem grew sharper. Each new layer required stones to be lifted higher than before. By the time the structure reached hundreds of feet, moving blocks vertically became the central engineering puzzle. Egyptian builders could not use cranes, pulleys, or iron winches. Their tools were limited to wood, rope, stone, and earth. Yet they succeeded in raising millions of blocks with these simple means. Straight ramp theory. One common theory is the straight ramp, a massive causeway of earth and rubble leading up one face of the pyramid. As the pyramid rose, the ramp was extended upward. Sledges dragged blocks along the incline, gradually raising them to higher levels. This solution is simple and effective. Experiments show that with enough manpower, sledges can be hauled up ramps at manageable slopes of 7 to 10 degrees. Water and clay could lubricate surfaces, easing friction. But a straight ramp to the full height of the pyramid would have been immense, nearly a mile long, requiring more material than the pyramid itself. Some suggest ramps were dismantled and reused, but the scale remains problematic. Zigzagging ramps. Another possibility is zigzagging ramps built along the pyramid's faces. Instead of one massive ramp, smaller ramps ran back and forth in switchbacks, allowing stones to be raised in stages. This solution reduces the need for a single enormous structure. Evidence of terraces and changes in construction at Giza supports the possibility. Blocks could be hauled along one face, turned, and hauled higher. The zigzag ramps may have hugged the pyramid itself, blending with its rising body. Spiral or encircling ramps. Some scholars propose spiral ramps wrapping around the pyramid as it grew. These ramps wound upward like a coil, hugging the outer surface, allowing stones to be hauled in a continuous path to the top. Archaeological traces are debated, but experiments show such ramps are feasible. The main challenge would be space. Ramps covering the faces would block alignment. Some propose ramps built partly outside, partly inside, leaving small traces visible today. Internal ramp hypothesis. One modern theory, advanced by architect Jean-Pierre Houdin, suggests an internal ramp spiraling inside the pyramid itself. According to this idea, stones were hauled up through corridors within the pyramid's body, visible in anomalies detected by scanning. If true, this would explain how builders achieved precision without massive external ramps. The theory remains debated, but it demonstrates Egyptian ingenuity may have been even more sophisticated than once thought. Levers and placement. Whatever ramps were used, final placement of blocks required levers. Wooden beams were used to pry stones upward, inch by inch, adjusting position until they fit precisely. Workers used levers to nudge blocks sideways, align joints, and raise stones to final levels where ramps ended. This method of gradual levering, lifting one edge, inserting stones beneath, repeating, allowed workers to achieve fine control even with massive blocks. The precision of the pyramid's joints speaks to this careful process. Staging and layering. The pyramid rose in courses, each layer finished before the next began. Workers hauled blocks up ramps, set them in place, then raised the ramps higher. This layering created a rhythm: cut, haul, raise, place, repeat. At the summit, smaller ramps and scaffolding allowed placement of capstones. Each stage was incremental, manageable, and repeated thousands of times until the pyramid reached its final height. Evidence from archaeology. Archaeological traces of ramps have been found near pyramid sites, remnants of mud brick, rubble, and tool marks. Reliefs show sledges being hauled up inclines, supported by men pouring water. Quarry marks at Giza and traces of ramps at other pyramids lend weight to these theories. No single solution may explain the entire process. Egyptians likely adapted, using straight ramps early, zigzags or spirals later, and levers throughout. The genius was in flexibility, not rigidity. Human power as the engine. At the heart of all methods was human power. Teams of men hauled ropes, strained against sledges, and worked in coordinated chants. Overseers timed pulls, priests blessed the effort, and crews competed in spirit. No pulleys, no wheels, no engines, only men, ropes, ramps, and will. The fact that this sufficed is a reminder of human potential when guided by vision and organization. Reflection. When we look at the Great Pyramid, we often marvel at its size but forget its process. It rose not in a single leap but in millions of small lifts. Each block raised by sledges and levers, each course added step by step, until stone became mountain. The ramps and levers are long gone, dismantled, or buried, but their work remains in the pyramid itself. It is a silent monument not only to kings but to methods so effective that they still baffle us in their simplicity. Closing image. Picture a ramp stretching upward along the pyramid's face. A sledge creaks as dozens of men haul ropes, chanting in unison. Overseers shout encouragement, another worker pours water onto the ramp. Slowly, the block inches upward. At the top, levers pry it into place, joints tightened with care. In the heat and dust, a mountain rises, one block at a time. Looking ahead. In the next part of our journey, we will step inside the pyramid to explore its internal chambers and passageways, the hidden world within the stone mountain, where symbolism and engineering met to serve eternity. From the outside, the Great Pyramid is a vast mountain of stone, silent and solid, its smooth sides once gleaming white beneath the Egyptian sun. But within this mass lies a hidden world, corridors, chambers, and shafts carved with purpose and precision. These inner spaces were not afterthoughts but central to the pyramid's function, both practical and symbolic. They were designed to protect the king's body, to house his spirit, and to map his journey to the afterlife. In this part of our journey, we step through the narrow passageways of Khufu's pyramid. We will follow the descent into bedrock, climb the grand gallery, stand within the granite weight of the king's chamber, and peer into shafts aligned with stars. Along the way, we will uncover how engineering and symbolism fused into a cosmic architecture, turning stone into eternity. The entrance. The original entrance to the Great Pyramid lies on the north face, about 55 feet above ground level. Today, visitors enter through a later breach known as the Robber's Tunnel, but the true entrance was carefully aligned to the cardinal points, facing due north. From this entrance begins the descending passage, a narrow corridor sloping steeply downward into the pyramid's core. Just over 3 feet high, it forces any who enter to bow, whether by design or necessity. The passage evokes humility before the resting king. The descending passage and subterranean chamber. The descending passage plunges deep into the bedrock beneath the pyramid, ending in the subterranean chamber. Rough and unfinished, this chamber is a puzzle. Was it an abandoned burial chamber? A symbolic underworld? A decoy to mislead tomb robbers? Its very roughness contrasts with the perfection above, suggesting it was never intended as the king's final resting place. Some scholars argue it represented the realm of the dead, the Duat, the chaotic underworld the king must pass through before rebirth. Whatever its purpose, it reminds us that the pyramid was more than a tomb, it was a symbolic journey. The ascending passage. Near the start of the descending passage, a hidden junction leads upward into the ascending passage, a corridor rising toward the pyramid's heart. Narrow and steep, it leads first to the so-called Queen's Chamber, then continues upward through the Grand Gallery. The presence of multiple passages reflects both practicality and symbolism, practicality in creating layers of defense, symbolism in representing stages of the soul's ascent. The Queen's Chamber. The Queen's Chamber lies on the pyramid's east-west axis, halfway up the structure. Despite its name, it was almost certainly not for a queen but may have been intended for the king's ka, or life force. Its pointed roof of corbelled limestone blocks forms a symbolic gable, suggesting rebirth. Small shafts extend from its walls, leading outward toward the stars. These may have served symbolic functions, allowing the king's spirit to ascend. The chamber's modest size contrasts with the grandeur of the king's chamber, suggesting it was a subsidiary space, perhaps representing the womb of rebirth. The Grand Gallery. The Grand Gallery is one of the pyramid's most breathtaking features. Over 150 feet long and nearly 30 feet high, it rises in corbelled steps of limestone, creating a soaring corridor unlike anything else in Old Kingdom architecture. Functionally, it served as a transition, leading from the ascending passage to the king's chamber. Symbolically, it may have represented the celestial passageway to the stars. Its scale impresses even today. Standing inside, one feels the weight of millions of tons of stone above, yet also the grandeur of space designed for eternity. Along its sides are slots that may have held wooden beams, possibly part of portcullis systems designed to block robbers or to help raise granite blocks into position. These practical elements coexist with symbolic grandeur, showing Egyptian mastery of function and meaning. The King's Chamber. At the heart of the pyramid lies the King's Chamber, constructed entirely of massive granite blocks hauled from Aswan. Its rectangular form is simple but imposing, its walls and ceiling slabs weighing up to 80 tons. Within lies the granite sarcophagus, empty now but once the resting place of Khufu's body. The sarcophagus is slightly too large to fit through the passages, suggesting it was placed during construction, before the chamber was sealed. Above the chamber are 5 relieving chambers, layers of granite beams designed to divert weight and prevent collapse. This ingenious system kept the chamber intact under millions of tons of stone, a triumph of ancient engineering. Symbolically, the king's chamber was the pharaoh's gateway to divinity. Surrounded by granite, a stone associated with eternity, the king lay at the axis of the pyramid, aligned with the cosmos. Air shafts and stellar alignments. From both the queen's chamber and the king's chamber extend narrow shafts, long thought to be air vents but more likely symbolic channels to the heavens. In the king's chamber, one shaft aligns with Orion's belt, associated with Osiris, god of rebirth, while the other points toward the circumpolar stars, the imperishable ones that never set. Through these shafts, the king's soul could ascend to join the gods, reborn among the eternal lights of the night sky. This alignment fuses astronomy and religion, turning the pyramid into a cosmic machine of resurrection. Sealing and security. The pyramid's passages also served defensive purposes. Granite portcullises could be lowered to block entry, false passages misled intruders, and rubble was used to fill corridors. Despite these efforts, tomb robbers likely breached the pyramid in antiquity. Yet the very act of sealing reveals intent. The pyramid was built to protect the king not only in life but in eternity, shielding his body and spirit from harm. Symbolism of the journey. Taken together, the passages and chambers form a symbolic journey. The descending passage represents descent into death and the underworld. The queen's chamber represents rebirth. The Grand Gallery represents ascent to the heavens. The king's chamber is the final union with the divine. Thus, the pyramid is not only a tomb but a map of the afterlife, guiding the king's soul through death, rebirth, and immortality. Reflection. Walking through the pyramid today, one feels both awe and confinement. The passages are narrow, the ceilings low, the walls close. Yet within these tight spaces lies grandeur, not in decoration but in symbolism. Every passage, every shaft, every chamber was carved with meaning. The Great Pyramid is not empty stone but filled with ideas, myths, and hopes. It is the story of a king's journey, written not in words but in architecture. Closing image. Picture the king's chamber in silence. Granite walls glow faintly in torchlight, the sarcophagus rests at the center. Above, relieving chambers bear the crushing weight of millions of tons. Through shafts, starlight glimmers faintly, connecting chamber to cosmos. Here, in this stone womb, the pharaoh sleeps, waiting to rise among the imperishable stars. Looking ahead. In the next part of our journey, we will explore the symbolism of pyramids themselves, why Egyptians built them in this shape, what they meant in religious and cosmic thought, and how the pyramid form became the supreme symbol of eternity. When we gaze upon the Great Pyramid, its sheer size and geometry compel us to ask, why this shape? Why did Egyptians choose the pyramid, its straight lines rising to a single point, its 4 faces meeting the sky, as the form in which to bury their kings? The answer lies in symbolism. For the Egyptians, the pyramid was not simply an engineering solution but a cosmic statement, a form filled with religious meaning. It was creation itself made stone, the sun's rays solidified, the eternal heavens embodied on earth. To build a pyramid was to recreate the universe, to place the king at its center, and to guarantee his immortality. In this part of our journey, we will explore the symbolic language of the pyramid, its connection to the primeval mound, to the sun god Ra, to the stars of the sky, and to the eternal cycle of rebirth. By understanding this symbolism, we see the pyramid not only as architecture but as theology, a stone hymn to eternity. The primeval mound. In Egyptian mythology, creation began with the primeval mound, the first land to rise from the waters of chaos at the dawn of time. From this mound, the sun god appeared, bringing light and order. The pyramid, with its broad base and rising peak, echoed this mound of creation. Its very form reminded Egyptians of the origin of the world. By building pyramids, kings associated themselves with creation itself, presenting their tombs as cosmic rebirths, places where the king could rise anew from chaos into eternity. Thus, the pyramid was not only a tomb but a recreation of the first act of creation, a renewal of order over chaos. The Benben stone. Closely tied to the primeval mound was the Benben stone, a sacred stone kept at Heliopolis, the great center of sun worship. This stone was a pointed pillar or obelisk-like shape, said to mark the spot where the sun god first emerged. The pyramid can be seen as a colossal Benben, magnified to monumental scale. Its tip, or pyramidion, was often covered in gold or electrum, gleaming in the sun, embodying the sun's first light at creation. By crowning the pyramid with such a capstone, Egyptians symbolically anchored the monument to the cosmic moment of beginning. The sun god Ra. By Khufu's time, the worship of the sun god Ra had grown central. The pyramid's shape was linked to the sun's rays, which Egyptians often depicted as slanting lines descending from the sky. The pyramid itself became a frozen ray of sunlight, solidified into stone. This connection explains the pyramid's perfect alignment with the cardinal directions and its glowing white casing stones. By day, the pyramid reflected the sun's brilliance; by night, it pointed upward toward the stars. It was both sunlight and starlight, heaven and earth, united. For the pharaoh, buried within, the pyramid was a bridge to Ra. Through its form, he could ascend to join the sun god in his eternal journey across the sky. Stars and the afterlife. Egyptians believed the souls of kings joined the stars. The circumpolar stars, which never set, symbolized eternity. The constellation Orion, associated with Osiris, symbolized rebirth. The pyramid's shafts and orientations were designed to connect the king to these celestial bodies. Thus, the pyramid's shape also pointed upward, guiding the king's spirit toward the imperishable stars. Its peak symbolized the meeting point of heaven and earth, the place where human and divine merged. The four sides. The pyramid's four faces, aligned to the cardinal directions, reinforced cosmic order. North, south, east, and west, the four corners of the world, were united in one monument. The pyramid was thus not only a tomb but a compass, anchoring the king at the center of the cosmos. To be buried within such a structure was to be aligned with the universe itself, a guarantee of eternal balance. The pyramidion. At the apex of each pyramid rested the pyramidion, a capstone often covered in gleaming gold or electrum. This small but vital stone was the pyramid's crown, the point of contact between earth and sky. When sunlight struck it, the pyramidion blazed, visible for miles, symbolizing the king's union with Ra. It was both literal and symbolic brilliance, the king shining as the sun upon his land. Symbol of power and permanence. Beyond religion, the pyramid's shape was also a symbol of political power. Its immensity proclaimed the pharaoh's ability to command labor, resources, and devotion. Its geometry reflected Egyptian ideals of Ma'at. Order, balance, harmony. Unlike palaces of mud brick, pyramids of stone promised permanence. To choose this form was to proclaim that the king's power and memory would endure as long as the sun and stars. Evolution of the form. The pyramid did not emerge fully formed. It evolved from mastabas to step pyramids to smooth-sided forms. Each stage added layers of symbolism. The mastaba was a tomb. The step pyramid was a stairway to heaven. The true pyramid was light itself, the sun made stone. By the time of Khufu, the symbolism had crystallized. The pyramid was no longer experiment but perfected icon, the supreme statement of divine kingship. The pyramid as cosmos. In total, the pyramid represented the entire cosmos. Its base was the earth, its peak the heavens. Its interior chambers mapped the soul's journey through death and rebirth. Its shafts linked to stars, its sides to the sun. To build a pyramid was to enclose the universe itself in stone, to place the king at its center, ensuring his immortality. Reflection. When we see the Great Pyramid today, stripped of casing, weathered by millennia, we must imagine not only the physical form but the symbolic one. It was a blazing mountain of light, a cosmic compass, a star map, a creation myth in stone. The pyramid endures not only because of its engineering but because of its meaning. It is both architecture and theology, stone and symbol, eternity and moment. Closing image. Picture the pyramid in its prime. Its white sides gleam like sunlight, its golden capstone flashes at dawn. From within, shafts point to Orion and the circumpolar stars. Priests chant hymns to Ra, incense rises, the king's soul ascends. The pyramid is no mere tomb, it is the cosmos itself, captured in stone. Looking ahead. In the next part of our journey, we will step away from the form and into the religious rituals that sustained the pyramid, the daily offerings, ceremonies, and festivals that kept the king alive in eternity. The Great Pyramid was never meant to be a silent monument of stone alone. It was a living place of ritual, a temple where priests offered daily sacrifices, where incense drifted through courtyards, where hymns were sung to Ra and to the spirit of the pharaoh. For the Egyptians, the pyramid was not finished when the last block was set. It began a second life, as the center of a religious cult that sustained the king's soul for eternity. In this part of our journey, we will walk through the sacred landscape of Giza, not only the pyramid itself, but the mortuary temples, causeways, and valley temples that accompanied it. We will explore the rituals performed there, the role of priests, the offerings of food and drink, and the festivals that renewed the king's presence. For the Egyptians, ritual was as important as architecture. Without the daily rhythm of offerings, the pyramid would not function. It was the rituals that gave stone its spirit. The Pyramid Complex. The Great Pyramid was not a lonely monument but part of a larger pyramid complex. Each king's complex followed a similar plan. The Valley Temple, located near the Nile, where the king's body was received and purified. The Causeway, a long, covered corridor leading upward from the valley to the plateau. The Mortuary Temple, adjoining the pyramid itself, where daily rituals were performed. The pyramid, the eternal tomb at the heart of it all. Together, these formed a sacred journey, from river to mountain, from life to eternity. The Valley Temple. At the river's edge stood the Valley Temple, where the king's funeral procession began. Here his body was received after embalming, purified with natron and water, dressed in fine linens, and prepared for its final journey. The temple also served as an entrance point for daily rituals. Priests, carrying offerings of bread, beer, meat, and incense, would ascend the causeway from here, linking the living city with the eternal tomb. The Causeway. Stretching nearly half a mile, the causeway connected the valley to the pyramid. Its walls were decorated with reliefs showing scenes of festivals, processions, and offerings. Covered to shield ceremonies from the sun, it served as a sacred corridor, guiding the king's body at burial and offerings thereafter. Walking this path was symbolic, an ascent from the fertile Nile Valley, the world of life, up to the desert plateau, the world of eternity. The Mortuary Temple. At the base of the pyramid stood the Mortuary Temple, the heart of ritual life. Here priests performed daily offerings to sustain the king's ka, his vital life force. The temple contained courtyards, chapels, and offering halls, all aligned with the pyramid itself. Reliefs and inscriptions describe offerings of bread, beer, cattle, fowl, fruit, and incense. These were not symbolic alone, actual food and drink were presented, consumed by priests, and redistributed. The cycle of offering ensured abundance not only for the king but for the temple community. Daily rituals. Rituals followed a rhythm as regular as the Nile. Each day, priests entered the mortuary temple to awaken the statue of the king, offer incense, present food, pour libations, and recite prayers. The ritual was not mere ceremony but necessity. Without offerings, the king's spirit might weaken; with them, he was nourished and renewed. The pyramid was thus a machine of ritual, requiring daily tending to sustain eternity. Priests of the pyramid. The mortuary cult required a vast staff. High priests supervised, scribes recorded offerings, and lower priests performed daily rites. Servants, bakers, and brewers supported the temple, ensuring the flow of food and drink. Priests were often drawn from elite families, serving terms of duty that rotated among them. To be a priest of Khufu's pyramid was prestigious, linking one to the divine cult of the greatest of kings. Festivals and the said ritual. Beyond daily offerings, festivals renewed the king's power. The most important was the said festival, a ritual of royal rejuvenation celebrated after 30 years of rule. Though Khufu did not live to celebrate it in life, the ritual was performed for him in death, symbolically renewing his energy for eternity. Other festivals aligned with solar cycles, linking the king to the rebirth of the sun each day. The pyramid was not static but part of Egypt's sacred calendar, beating with the rhythm of the heavens. Offerings of the people. Though priests led rituals, ordinary Egyptians could participate by donating food, drink, or incense. To give offerings to the king was to share in his eternity, ensuring blessings for oneself and one's family. Thus, the pyramid was not only the pharaoh's tomb but a focus of community devotion, drawing the living into its sacred orbit. Ritual and symbolism. Every act had symbolic meaning. Incense was the breath of the gods. Bread was the body of sustenance. Beer was joy. Meat was strength. Each offering nourished not only the king but the cosmic order itself. To neglect ritual was to risk imbalance, to perform it was to uphold Ma'at, the eternal balance of the universe. End of the cult. The mortuary cult of Khufu endured for centuries but eventually faded. As dynasties passed, resources shifted to newer kings, and the Great Pyramid fell silent. Yet traces of the cult remain, in graffiti, in temple ruins, in texts that remember offerings made long after Khufu's death. Even in ruin, the pyramid still carried ritual power. Travelers and pilgrims saw it as a sacred place, a remnant of divine order. Reflection. The Great Pyramid was not only built, it was lived. Through rituals, offerings, prayers, and festivals, it was sustained as a living monument, a temple of eternity. Without these rituals, the pyramid would have been a hollow shell. With them, it became a vessel of immortality, a place where the king's spirit was nourished daily by the devotion of his people. In this way, the pyramid was not only stone but spirit, not only architecture but liturgy. Closing image. Picture the mortuary temple at dawn. Priests in white linen carry trays of bread, jars of beer, cuts of meat. Incense smoke curls upward, the air sweet with fragrance. Hymns are chanted, prayers recited. The statue of Khufu glows in torchlight. Beyond, the pyramid looms, its golden capstone catching the first light of the rising sun. Stone and ritual, silence and song, unite in eternity. Looking ahead. In the next part of our journey, we will look at the mathematics and astronomy of the Great Pyramid, how numbers, proportions, and stars shaped its design and meaning, turning it into both monument and cosmic diagram. The Great Pyramid is not only a mountain of stone but also a monument of numbers. Its form embodies proportions so precise, alignments so exact, that for centuries scholars and dreamers alike have marveled at the hidden mathematics within its walls. Some see coincidence, others intention, but all agree, the pyramid is as much a work of geometry as it is of engineering. In this part of our journey, we step into the world of ancient Egyptian mathematics and astronomy. We will see how surveyors measured and aligned, how proportions reflect harmony, how the pyramid connects to stars and solar cycles. Though the Egyptians did not use algebra or calculus, they possessed a practical geometry that allowed them to translate cosmic ideas into stone. Measuring the Earth. The base of the Great Pyramid measures about 755 feet on each side. The difference between sides is less than 8 inches, a degree of precision astonishing for its scale. The four corners align with the cardinal directions with an error of less than 0.05 degrees, so accurate that modern compasses struggle to match it. How did Egyptians achieve such accuracy? With ropes, rods, plumb lines, and sighting stars. They may not have had modern tools, but they had patience, repetition, and a deep respect for order. To them, aligning stone with heaven was an act of devotion, ensuring the king's eternity. The ratio of height to base. The pyramid's height-to-base ratio encodes striking mathematical relationships. Originally, the height was about 280 cubits, and each base side about 440 cubits. This ratio of 280 to 440 reduces to 1422, or 711. This proportion has several fascinating implications. If the pyramid's perimeter is compared to its height, the ratio approximates 2 pi, linking circle and square, heaven and earth. Some argue this reflects deliberate knowledge of pi, though others caution it may be coincidence born of practical geometry. Regardless, the proportions create harmony, a slope of about 51.5 degrees, steep enough to soar, shallow enough to endure. It is geometry perfected for eternity. The golden ratio. Some enthusiasts see the golden ratio in the pyramid, that mysterious number phi is almost equal to 1.618, associated with beauty and harmony. The slope angle of the Great Pyramid yields ratios close to phi, though not exact. Whether intentional or not, the pyramid embodies forms that resonate with human sense of balance. Even if Egyptians did not define phi as we do, they understood intuitively that certain proportions felt harmonious, both structurally and symbolically. Units of measure. Egyptians measured with the royal cubit, about 20.6 inches. The Great Pyramid's dimensions fit neatly into whole cubits, showing deliberate calculation. Ropes knotted at cubit intervals allowed surveyors to measure large distances. This system of measure ensured consistency, turning human steps into cosmic proportions. For Egyptians, numbers were not abstract but practical, tied to body and earth, yet capable of expressing eternity. Astronomical alignments. Beyond geometry, the pyramid aligns with the heavens. Its sides face north, south, east, and west with uncanny precision. Shafts from the king's chamber point toward Orion's belt and circumpolar stars, linking the king with Osiris and the imperishable stars. Some suggest passages align with solstices or equinoxes, embedding solar cycles into stone. The pyramid thus served as both tomb and observatory, a place where architecture mirrored the sky. The star shafts. The so-called air shafts of the king's chamber have been shown to align with specific stars around 2500 BCE. The southern shaft pointed toward Orion, symbol of rebirth. The northern pointed toward Thuban and Draco, then the pole star. Through these channels, the king's soul could ascend to the heavens, joining Osiris and the eternal stars. The pyramid was thus both stairway and star map, guiding the pharaoh's journey. Numerology and symbolism. Numbers carried symbolic meaning. 4 sides represented the 4 directions, 4 corners the 4 corners of the earth. The pyramid's square base symbolized stability, while its point symbolized unity with heaven. The number 7, reflected in ratios, was sacred, linked to completeness. 11, linked with cycles. Even if we cannot know the full symbolic language, we sense that proportions were chosen with care, not chance. Cosmic geometry. Taken together, the pyramid is cosmic geometry. Base square equals earth. Height equals axis to heaven. Sloping sides equals sun's rays. Shafts equals stars. Proportions equals harmony of cosmos. The pyramid is thus not only architecture but cosmology, a diagram of creation itself, scaled into stone. The mystery of precision. Skeptics wonder if Egyptians could truly have achieved such mathematical intentions. Did they consciously aim for pi or phi, or do we impose modern concepts on ancient builders? The answer may lie in between. Egyptians had no formulas, but they had ropes, sight lines, and intuition. Through trial and refinement, they created forms that approximated harmony, whether or not they named it mathematically. The result is the same, a monument whose proportions still inspire awe, whose alignments still impress astronomers. Reflection. The Great Pyramid is not just a pile of stones but a poem of numbers. Its base and height, its slopes and shafts, all encode relationships between Earth, Sun, and stars. Whether through conscious calculation or practical wisdom, Egyptians inscribed the cosmos in limestone. Standing at its base, we do not only see stone, we see numbers, geometry, and stars translated into form. The pyramid is a book of mathematics, written in blocks, read by heaven. Closing image. Picture surveyors at dawn, ropes stretched across sand, priests sighting stars as the night fades. They chant as they mark true north, fix corners, and measure cubits. Slowly, a design takes shape, a square for earth, a line for heaven, a slope for light. Their calculations will outlast dynasties, carved forever in stone. Looking ahead. In the next part of our journey, we will explore the life around the pyramid, the villages of workers, the supply chains of food and tools, the bustling community that sustained construction. When we imagine the building of the Great Pyramid, it is easy to picture only the monument itself, the rising stone, the hauling ropes, the chanting crews. Yet beyond the pyramid stood a second, invisible city, a world of workers' villages, bakeries, breweries, stables, storehouses, and administrative offices. This was the living heart of pyramid construction, where tens of thousands of men and women sustained the project day after day. In this part of our journey, we leave the towering stone mountain behind and step into the everyday lives of those who built it. We will walk through the workers' village, smell the bread baking and beer brewing, hear the songs of laborers at night, and see how supply chains carried food, tools, and animals to Giza. The pyramid was not only an engineering project, it was a social organism, a living community with its own rhythms and culture. The workers' village. Archaeological excavations have uncovered a settlement near Giza often called the workers' village or Hayt el-Ghurab. Here, rows of long galleries housed laborers, while larger houses sheltered overseers. Streets connected kitchens, bakeries, and storage rooms. The scale of the village reveals planning. It was not a temporary camp but a semi-permanent settlement, designed to house thousands. This suggests that pyramid construction was not chaotic forced labor but an organized system, with infrastructure to support its workforce. Housing and living quarters. Most laborers lived in gallery barracks, long rectangular buildings divided into rooms, each housing about 40 men. Sleeping mats lined the floor, and storage pits held personal items. Life was crowded, but it fostered camaraderie. Higher-ranking craftsmen and overseers had more spacious houses, with multiple rooms, hearths, and courtyards. Their homes suggest families may have lived nearby, supporting the community with cooking, weaving, and childcare. Food and drink. Feeding the workforce was essential. Excavations reveal vast bakeries and breweries, capable of producing thousands of loaves of bread and jars of beer daily. Bread and beer were staples, nutritious, filling, and symbolic of life itself. Workers also ate meat in surprising abundance. Bones of cattle, sheep, and goats found near Giza suggest rations included beef and mutton, luxuries in daily Egyptian life. Feeding laborers well kept them strong and motivated, and it reinforced the idea that serving the king was an honor. Other foods included fish, lentils, onions, garlic, and dates. The smells of baking bread, brewing beer, and roasting meat would have filled the village daily, a constant reminder of the scale of provision required. Medical care. Skeletons found at Giza show not only injuries, broken bones, arthritis, strained joints, but also evidence of healing. Some fractures were set and healed, showing workers received medical care. Others lived long after severe injuries, suggesting they were not abandoned but treated. This reveals a striking truth: pyramid workers were valued. They were not disposable slaves but citizens performing a duty, supported with food, housing, and medicine. Their health mattered to the project's success. Tools and workshops. The village also contained workshops for making tools. Copper chisels had to be sharpened constantly, ropes twisted, sledges repaired. Carpenters shaped wood into sledges and beams, stonecutters prepared pounding tools, rope makers spun fibers into thick cords. This constant cycle of maintenance kept construction running smoothly. Without tools, no stone could be cut or hauled; without rope, no block could be moved. The workshops were as vital as the quarries. Daily rhythm. Life in the workers' village followed the rhythm of the sun. At dawn, men gathered for breakfast, bread, beer, onions, before marching to the pyramid. By mid-morning, sledges creaked along ramps, chants rose, overseers called orders. At midday, workers rested, eating rations under makeshift shelters. By evening, men returned to the village, exhausted but fed with meat and beer. Night brought songs, stories, and camaraderie. Fires flickered, drums beat, men joked and boasted. For all its hardship, life at Giza had community, rhythm, and meaning. Families and women. Though most heavy laborers were men, women likely lived in nearby settlements, supporting the workforce. They baked bread, brewed beer, wove cloth, and cared for children. Families of craftsmen may have lived year-round, creating continuity. This reminds us that pyramid building was not only about men dragging stones, it was about families and households, about entire communities woven into the project. Administration and oversight. The village also housed scribes and administrators. They recorded rations, tallied deliveries, and scheduled crews. Without their records, the project would collapse. Papyrus fragments, ostraca, and graffiti reveal the bureaucratic side of pyramid building, lists of bread, beer, cattle, and tools. Priests also lived nearby, overseeing rituals to sanctify labor. For Egyptians, every action required divine blessing. Moving stone was both work and ritual, labor and liturgy. Cemeteries of the workers. Near the village lie cemeteries where pyramid builders were buried. These graves were modest but dignified, with pottery, food offerings, and tools. Burial so close to the king's pyramid was an honor, showing that workers were remembered and valued. Some tombs even bear names and titles, reminding us that behind every block was a human life, with identity, pride, and legacy. A living city. All this together, housing, food, tools, rituals, cemeteries, formed a living city of builders. At its peak, the pyramid site may have rivaled Egypt's largest towns in population. It was a place of sweat and dust, but also of laughter and song, of children running, of women baking, of men boasting of their crews. The pyramid was not built in isolation. It rose from a city of life, a community as much as a monument. Reflection. When we imagine the Great Pyramid, we must see not only stone but people. The workers' village, the bakeries, the workshops, the cemeteries, these were as much a part of the pyramid as its blocks. The monument is not only an achievement of engineering but of society, a collective effort that united Egypt in purpose. The Great Pyramid is, in truth, two pyramids, one of stone, rising toward heaven, one of people, living, working, and dying in its shadow. Both together created eternity. Closing image. Picture the workers' village at dusk. Fires burn in hearths, the smell of baking bread and brewing beer fills the air. Children laugh, men return from the plateau with dust on their skin, women stir pots of stew. In the distance, the pyramid glows in the setting sun, rising above the village like a silent guardian. Life and eternity stand side by side. Looking ahead. In the next part of our journey, we will explore the religion of the afterlife more deeply, how Egyptians imagined death, rebirth, and the soul's journey, and how the pyramid served as a vessel for these beliefs. For modern eyes, the Great Pyramid is a tomb, a colossal grave. But for the ancient Egyptians, it was far more than a resting place for a body. It was a vessel of transformation, a machine of eternity, designed to carry the soul of the pharaoh from mortal life into divine existence. To understand the pyramid, we must understand how Egyptians imagined death and the afterlife, not as an end, but as a passage, a rebirth, a journey among the stars. In this part of our journey, we will explore the Egyptian vision of death, the nature of the soul, the trials of the afterlife, and the way the pyramid embodied and enabled this transformation. We will follow the king from deathbed to tomb, from burial rites to cosmic ascent, and see how stone and ritual united to guarantee immortality. The Egyptian view of death. For Egyptians, death was not an annihilation but a transition. Life and death were part of the same cycle, like the daily rising and setting of the sun. Just as Ra descended into the underworld each night and was reborn at dawn, so too did humans die to be reborn. Yet death was also dangerous. The soul had to navigate the underworld, face judgment, and secure passage to eternity. Without proper rituals, tombs, and offerings, the soul risked annihilation. Death was a threshold, but one that required preparation. The soul's components. Egyptians imagined the soul not as a single entity but as multiple parts. Ka, the life force, sustained by food and drink. Ba, the personality, often depicted as a human-headed bird, able to travel between worlds. Ak, the transfigured spirit, achieved after proper burial and rituals, able to join the gods. Ren, the name, which had to be remembered for eternity. Shut, the shadow, inseparable from existence. The pyramid was designed to preserve all these parts. Protecting the body for the Ka, inscribing the name for the Ren, guiding the Ba to the heavens, and ensuring the transformation into Ak. The king's death and burial. When the pharaoh died, elaborate rituals began. The body was embalmed, dried in natron, wrapped in linen, and anointed with oils. Priests recited spells to protect each part of the body and soul. The process was not only preservation but transformation, turning flesh into a divine body. The funeral procession carried the king across the Nile to the Valley Temple, then up the causeway to the pyramid. Here, final rites were performed, offerings made, and the body placed in the sarcophagus within the king's chamber. Seals closed passages, portcullises dropped, and the king was enclosed within his mountain of stone. But this was only the beginning. The true journey lay ahead. The journey through the underworld. Like Ra traveling through the night sky, the king's soul journeyed through the Duat, the underworld. This realm was filled with dangers, serpents, demons, and chaotic forces. To survive, the soul needed spells, rituals, and offerings, provided by the pyramid texts inscribed in later pyramids. Priests believed the king's Ba could fly through shafts aligned to stars, emerging into the heavens. The pyramid was a cosmic ladder, a stairway of stone guiding the king's soul upward. Judgment and transformation. In Egyptian belief, ordinary people faced the judgment of Osiris, their hearts weighed against the feather of Ma'at. But for the king, destiny was different. As son of Ra, he joined the gods directly, becoming one with Osiris and Ra. Through rituals, the pharaoh transformed from mortal into divine. His Ka was sustained by offerings, his Ba guided by stars, his name preserved in inscriptions, his Ak shining among the imperishable. The pyramid as machine of eternity. The Great Pyramid embodied this process. Its base represented the earth, its peak the heavens. The descending passage symbolized death, the ascending passage rebirth. The king's chamber was the womb of eternity, granite protecting the divine body. Shafts aligned with Orion and circumpolar stars ensured celestial ascent. Every stone was part of the journey, base, passage, chamber, shaft, all symbolic stages of rebirth. The pyramid was not a tomb alone but a cosmic diagram, a machine designed to work forever. Sustenance in eternity. The king's Ka required offerings. Priests brought bread, beer, meat, and incense daily to the mortuary temple, ensuring nourishment. These offerings sustained not only the king but cosmic balance. By feeding the pharaoh, Egypt fed the universe itself. Families, too, could offer prayers and food, linking their devotion to the king's eternity. The pyramid became a shared axis, where human and divine met through offerings. Union with the sun and stars. Ultimately, the king ascended to the heavens. By day, his soul joined Ra in the solar bark, sailing across the sky. By night, he joined the circumpolar stars, the imperishable ones that never died. He became both Osiris, Lord of Rebirth, and Ra, Lord of Light. The pyramid was thus both tomb and launch pad, transforming the pharaoh into a cosmic being who guaranteed life and order for Egypt. Reflection. The Great Pyramid is not fully understood until we see it through Egyptian eyes, not as a dead monument, but as a living machine of eternity. For them, it was not about stone alone but about the king's journey, his transformation, his union with gods. In honoring Khufu, Egyptians honored themselves, for his immortality ensured their cosmic order. The pyramid was eternity made visible. Closing image. Picture the funeral of Khufu. Priests in white robes carry incense, mourners chant hymns. The king's body, wrapped in linen, is carried through the causeway, placed within granite walls. Seals close, torches fade. Above, the pyramid gleams in sunlight. Inside, the king begins his journey, descending into darkness, rising toward stars, becoming eternal. Looking ahead. In the next part of our journey, we will look beyond Khufu's reign to his successors, Khafre and Menkaure, and how their pyramids continued, adapted, and transformed the legacy of Giza. Khufu's Great Pyramid set a standard so high it seemed unmatchable, a mountain of stone that dominated not only the plateau of Giza but the imagination of all who saw it. Yet his successors did not retreat from this grandeur. Instead, they built upon it, adding their own monuments, temples, and statues, transforming Giza into the greatest royal necropolis in history. Two kings in particular carried Khufu's legacy forward, his son Khafre, builder of the second pyramid and the Great Sphinx, and his grandson Menkaure, whose smaller but refined pyramid completed the trio at Giza. Together, their works created the iconic skyline that still defines Egypt today. In this part of our journey, we will walk through the reigns of Khafre and Menkaure. We will stand before their pyramids, trace their temples, and uncover the meanings of their monuments. Each pyramid tells a story, not only of stone, but of succession, symbolism, and the evolving balance of ambition and humility in Egypt's old kingdom. Khafre, the builder of the second pyramid. Khafre, known to the Greeks as Chephren, ruled after Khufu, around 2558 to 2532 BCE. He inherited his father's ambition but faced a challenge. How could he build a pyramid worthy of his reign when Khufu's already towered over Egypt? Khafre's answer was brilliant. He built slightly smaller but on higher ground, creating the illusion that his pyramid was equal, or even greater. At 471 feet tall originally, compared to Khufu's 481, Khafre's pyramid seems almost as imposing. Today, it even appears taller, thanks to the elevation of its foundation. This subtle manipulation shows Khafre's intelligence. He could not outmatch Khufu in size, but he could rival him in presence. The second pyramid. Khafre's pyramid sits southwest of Khufu's, its base about 707 feet per side. Like his father's, it was clad in gleaming Tura limestone. Remarkably, at the top still remain patches of original casing stones, giving us a glimpse of how the entire pyramid once shone. Inside, the design was simpler than Khufu's labyrinth of passages. A single descending corridor led to the burial chamber, lined with granite, where Khafre's sarcophagus once rested. The simplicity suggests a focus on external grandeur rather than interior complexity. The mortuary and valley temples. Khafre's complex is notable for its temples, among the best preserved in Egypt. His mortuary temple, at the pyramid's base, was connected by a long causeway to the valley temple, near the Nile. The valley temple, built of massive limestone blocks faced with granite, still stands with impressive solidity. Its polished floors and statue niches suggest a place of ritual splendor. Archaeologists discovered statues of Khafre here, including the famous seated diorite statue now in the Cairo Museum, showing the king protected by the falcon god Horus. These temples remind us that the pyramid was part of a larger sacred landscape, where rituals of eternal kingship were enacted daily. The Great Sphinx. Khafre is often credited with commissioning the Great Sphinx, carved directly from the bedrock near his pyramid. With the body of a lion and the head of a king, the Sphinx embodied strength and wisdom, guarding the necropolis with eternal watchfulness. Though some debate whether it was Khafre or another king, its alignment and proximity to Khafre's causeway support his connection. If so, the Sphinx was an unprecedented monument, fusing architecture and sculpture, declaring the king as both man and god, ruler and protector. The Sphinx added a new dimension to the pyramid complex, one of guardianship, mythology, and enduring mystery. Menkaure, the third pyramid. Khafre was followed by his son Menkaure, who ruled around 2532 to 2503 BCE. His pyramid, the smallest of the three, stands 213 feet tall, less than half Khufu's height. At first glance, it may seem modest. But Menkaure's pyramid represents a shift in royal emphasis, from sheer scale to refinement, intimacy, and beauty. The pyramid's base measures 356 feet per side. Its lower courses were faced with granite from Aswan, polished to a dark, rich sheen, while the upper casing was fine white limestone. This duality of color gave Menkaure's pyramid a striking appearance, contrasting with the uniform whiteness of his predecessors. Inside, passages were more elaborate, with niches, chambers, and a vaulted burial chamber. Though robbed in antiquity, remnants of a basalt sarcophagus, now lost at sea during transport in the 19th century, testify to its splendor. Menkaure's temples and statues. Like his predecessors, Menkaure built mortuary and valley temples linked by a causeway. Excavations at his valley temple revealed remarkable statues, including triads showing Menkaure with Hathor and various known goddesses. These works emphasize harmony between king and gods, between central power and regional deities. The statues, carved in fine schist, are masterpieces of Old Kingdom art, blending idealism and realism. They show Menkaure not only as ruler but as participant in a divine community. The Pyramids of the Queens. Beside Menkaure's pyramid stand three smaller subsidiary pyramids, likely for his queens. These echo the pattern of family burials at Giza, showing the pyramid plateau as a dynastic necropolis. Each smaller pyramid extended the king's legacy through his consorts and successors. Symbolism of the three pyramids. Together, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure's pyramids form the iconic triad of Giza. To stand before them is to see succession in stone. Khufu's vast ambition, the largest and most imposing. Khafre's assertion, almost equal, guarded by the Sphinx. Menkaure's refinement, smaller but elegant, enriched with art. The three pyramids balance grandeur and humility, dominance and intimacy, forming a dialogue of generations. Legacy of Giza. With Menkaure, the era of giant pyramids ended. Later kings built smaller pyramids, focusing resources elsewhere. But the triad of Giza remained unmatched, the pinnacle of Old Kingdom pyramid building. The site became legendary, visited by travelers for millennia. For Greeks and Romans, it was already ancient, a wonder beyond comprehension. Even today, the pyramids of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure stand as the ultimate symbols of Egypt. Reflection. The story of Giza is not one of a single king but of a dynasty. Khufu built the first and greatest, Khafre added the Sphinx and rivaled his father, Menkaure refined the form with beauty. Together, they created not only monuments but a cultural statement, that kingship was eternal, that Egypt was strong, that stone could embody time itself. The Giza Plateau is thus not only Khufu's legacy but a family's, a dynasty's, a civilization's. Closing image. Picture the plateau in its prime. Khufu's Great Pyramid gleams in white stone, Khafre's rises beside it, capped with shining casing, the Sphinx crouched in eternal watch. Menkaure's smaller but elegant pyramid completes the triad, its granite base glowing dark against white limestone. Priests chant in temples, smoke of offerings curls in the air. Together, they proclaim eternity, the skyline of immortality. Looking ahead. In the next part of our journey, we will explore the decline of pyramid building after Giza, why later kings built smaller monuments, and how the focus of Egyptian kingship shifted away from massive stone mountains. For nearly a century, the plateau of Giza blazed with ambition. Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure raised pyramids that defied imagination, temples that echoed with hymns, and statues that embodied eternal kingship. Yet, after Menkaure, the age of massive stone pyramids ended. Later kings built smaller, less durable monuments, and by the New Kingdom, pharaohs abandoned pyramids altogether, hiding their tombs in the Valley of the Kings. Why did this happen? What changed in Egypt's political, economic, and religious world that caused such a shift? To answer, we must look at the fragile balance that sustained the Pyramid Age, and how it unraveled. The cost of eternity. The Great Pyramid consumed vast resources: stone from quarries, wood for sledges, food for workers, copper for chisels, and administrative oversight on an unprecedented scale. To maintain such a project required a strong centralized state, abundant harvests, and loyal labor. But by the end of the 4th dynasty, strain showed. Menkaure's pyramid was half the height of Khufu's. Later kings of the 5th and 6th dynasties built smaller still, often with cores of rubble faced with stone rather than solid blocks. These structures decayed more quickly, a stark contrast to Giza's enduring monuments. The decline reflected limits of economy. Egypt could not sustain such colossal works indefinitely. Changing religious beliefs. Religion, too, shifted. Under the 5th dynasty, the cult of Ra, the sun god, grew in prominence. Kings began building sun temples at Abusir, emphasizing solar worship over pyramid grandeur. The pyramid texts, first inscribed in Una's pyramid at the end of the 5th dynasty, also signaled a change. Instead of relying solely on the monument's form, priests used spells and inscriptions to guarantee rebirth. The pyramid became less about physical size and more about ritual words. Thus, the pyramid's symbolic function evolved. Eternity was no longer measured in stone alone but in texts and liturgy. Political fragmentation. By the end of the Old Kingdom, central authority weakened. Nobles in the provinces, nomarchs, gained power, building their own elaborate tombs. The king's dominance diminished, and with it, his ability to command vast labor forces. Without strong central power, no ruler could summon the resources needed for another Great Pyramid. The political unity that made Giza possible dissolved, ushering in the first intermediate period of fragmentation and decline. Architectural shifts. As pyramids shrank, they also changed structurally. Builders used smaller limestone blocks, rubble fill, and mud brick, reducing durability. Many later pyramids collapsed or eroded, leaving little more than mounds. This decline was not simply incompetence but adaptation. Pharaohs built more quickly, with fewer resources, relying on inscriptions and rituals to ensure eternity. But the grandeur of Giza was gone. From pyramids to hidden tombs. By the Middle and New Kingdoms, pharaohs abandoned pyramids entirely. Instead, they chose hidden tombs in the cliffs of Thebes, most famously the Valley of the Kings. Here, long corridors and painted chambers replaced towering pyramids. Why hide what once soared? Practical reasons played a role. Pyramids, visible for miles, invited tomb robbers. Hidden tombs reduced this risk, though never eliminated it. Religious emphasis also shifted toward the underworld journey, better represented in subterranean chambers. The Pyramid Age was over, replaced by new visions of eternity. The last great pyramid builders. A few later kings tried to revive the pyramid tradition. Pepi II, the last ruler of the 6th dynasty, built a pyramid at Saqqara, though modest in scale. In the Middle Kingdom, Senusret II and Amenemhat III built pyramids at Lahan and Hawara, but these used mud brick cores and soon decayed. These attempts show nostalgia for the grandeur of the past but also its impossibility. Giza remained unmatched, the high-water mark of pyramid ambition. Why Giza endured? If later pyramids crumbled, why did Khufu's endure? The answer lies in stone and vision. The Great Pyramid's massive limestone blocks, precisely cut and carefully placed, created stability unmatched by rubble core pyramids. Its foundation, leveled with astonishing accuracy, gave it resilience against time. But endurance was also symbolic. Khufu built at the height of centralized power, when Egypt was united, rich, and ambitious. His pyramid reflects not only stone but political will. Later ages could not reproduce that unity. Legacy of the Pyramid Age. The decline of pyramid building did not diminish Egypt's fascination with eternity. Instead, it redirected it. The afterlife remained central, but new forms expressed it: hidden tombs, richly painted walls, and elaborate funerary texts like the Book of the Dead. Giza's pyramids became symbols of a golden age, reminders of when kings commanded mountains. Later Egyptians revered them as sacred relics of the ancestors, even as they chose new burial forms. Reflection. The story of pyramid decline is one of limits and change. Stone mountains could not be built forever, economies strained, politics fractured, religions evolved. Yet the idea of eternity endured, adapting to new forms. The Great Pyramid thus marks both a peak and a turning point. After it, pyramids shrank, shifted, and eventually vanished. What remained was not stone alone but the eternal quest for life after death, reshaped again and again by each generation. Closing image. Picture Egypt in the 6th dynasty. A king's pyramid rises at Saqqara, small and crumbling, while nobles build their own grand tombs nearby. Priests chant spells in narrow chambers, offering words rather than walls. In the distance, Giza's giants gleam, reminders of a past no one can equal. The age of mountains is over, but their shadow lingers. Looking ahead. In the next part of our journey, we will explore the mysteries and myths that later generations attached to the pyramids, legends of magic, speculation about hidden chambers, and the enduring fascination of these monuments through time. The Great Pyramid of Giza has stood for more than 4,500 years. In that time, empires have risen and fallen, religions have flourished and faded, and languages have been born and died. Yet the pyramid has remained. With its endurance has come an inevitable consequence, mystery. For those who came after the Pyramid Age, the towering monuments were already ancient, their true purpose obscured, their builders half forgotten. In this silence, myth rushed in, filling the void with stories of magic, treasure, and secrets locked within stone. In this part of our journey, we wander through the world of myth and legend. We will hear what Greeks and Romans thought of the pyramids, how Arab storytellers reimagined them, what modern seekers and mystics claimed, and how even today, myths still cling to the limestone like desert dust. The pyramid has always been both fact and fable, history and dream. Ancient visitors, Greeks and Romans. By the time of Herodotus, the Greek historian writing in the 5th century BCE, the pyramids were already 2,000 years old. To him, they were wonders beyond comprehension. He described Khufu's cruelty in forcing labor, tales of his daughter selling herself to fund stones, and elaborate mechanisms hidden inside. Though inaccurate, Herodotus' stories reveal the awe of the Greeks. They saw the pyramids not only as tombs but as enigmas, monuments that must have concealed secrets. Romans, too, marveled. Pliny the Elder wrote of their size and cost, questioning their purpose. For them, the pyramids were symbols of Egypt's extravagance, folly, or glory, depending on the telling. Already, myth was overtaking memory. Arab legends. Centuries later, in the Islamic world, the pyramids took on new myths. Medieval Arab writers believed they were built before the Great Flood, by a king or prophet who wished to preserve knowledge. Inside, they imagined treasures, books, magical instruments, even talismans of the stars. Some legends credited Hermes Trismegistus, a mystical sage, with their construction, blending Greek and Egyptian lore. Others said King Surid, warned by dreams of a coming flood, built the pyramids to preserve wisdom. For these storytellers, the pyramids were not tombs but libraries of eternity, safeguarding ancient secrets. Treasure hunters and hidden chambers. Throughout history, seekers have probed the pyramids for treasure. Caliph al-Ma'mun, in the 9th century CE, tunneled into the Great Pyramid, breaking into passages still explored today. Though disappointed by the lack of gold, his dig fueled further myths of hidden chambers filled with riches. Even today, speculation persists. Some imagine undiscovered rooms, sealed passages, or hidden libraries within. Modern technologies like ground-penetrating radar and cosmic ray scans have revealed anomalies, voids above the Grand Gallery, still unexplained. Mystery remains, inviting both science and imagination. Mystical interpretations. In the 19th and 20th centuries, Western mystics and esoteric societies claimed the pyramids encoded secret wisdom. Some argued their dimensions revealed prophecies, mathematical constants, or cosmic laws. The pyramid inch theory claimed each inch of passage represented a year of history. Others believed pyramids radiated energy, preserving food or sharpening blades. While modern science dismisses such notions, their persistence reveals the power of myth. The pyramid's precision and mystery invite projection. It becomes a mirror of human hopes and fears. Alien theories. In popular culture, some have claimed the pyramids could not have been built by humans alone, crediting extraterrestrials with their construction. These theories, though lacking evidence, reflect modern awe. How could ancient people achieve what still astonishes us today? The truth, of course, lies not in aliens but in human ingenuity. Yet the allure of such myths shows how the pyramid remains beyond comprehension for many, a riddle that resists easy answers. The pyramid as symbol. Beyond specific myths, the pyramid has become a universal symbol of mystery, power, eternity. It appears in art, literature, and even on money, like the US dollar bill. For some, it represents stability, for others, hidden power, for many, the unknown. The pyramid's simplicity of form, a square rising to a point, makes it endlessly adaptable, a canvas for meaning. Enduring mysteries. Even today, real mysteries remain. How exactly were blocks moved? What methods leveled the base with such precision? What is the purpose of the voids detected in recent scans? The pyramid still holds secrets, though perhaps less magical than myths suggest. Yet in another sense, the myths themselves are part of the pyramid's story. They show how each generation reinterprets it, shaping it into their own mirror of meaning. Reflection. The Great Pyramid is both monument and mystery. It was built as a tomb, but in silence it became legend, a library, a talisman, a prophecy, a spaceship. The myths reveal as much about those who told them as about the pyramid itself. Greeks saw tyranny, Arabs saw wisdom, modern mystics see energy, and scientists see riddles of engineering. The pyramid absorbs all meanings, enduring not only in stone but in story. Closing image. Picture a caravan in medieval Cairo. Travelers gather around a storyteller who recounts how King Surid built the pyramids before the flood, filling them with jewels and books of magic. The listeners gaze toward Giza, where the silhouettes rise against the desert sky. They know the truth is hidden, but in the telling, the pyramids live anew. Looking ahead. In the next and final part of our journey, we will reflect on the legacy of the pyramids, how they shaped Egypt, inspired the world, and continue to stand as timeless symbols of human ambition and wonder. When the last block was laid upon Menkaure's pyramid, when priests sang the final hymns, when smoke of offerings drifted into the desert air, Egypt had completed an era. The pyramids of Giza stood gleaming in the sun, white mountains of stone rising from the plateau, visible for miles along the Nile. For the people of the Old Kingdom, they were monuments not only to kings but to eternity itself. Now, more than 4,500 years later, the pyramids still stand. Dynasties have passed, empires collapsed, religions transformed, yet the pyramids endure. They are no longer centers of cult or ritual, but they continue to inspire awe. Travelers, scholars, and dreamers from every age have gazed upon them and wondered, how were they built, and why? In this final part of our journey, we reflect on their legacy. We look at their impact on Egypt, their influence on later civilizations, their role in global imagination, and their meaning today. The pyramids are not only relics of the past, they are living symbols, eternal in their presence. Legacy for Egypt. For ancient Egyptians, the pyramids defined kingship. To be a pharaoh was to build a house of eternity. Even after the age of giant pyramids passed, their symbolic power lingered. Later rulers echoed the pyramid's form in smaller tombs, in obelisks, even in the very hieroglyph for pyramid, which came to mean monument. The pyramids also defined the Egyptian relationship with death. They embodied the belief that kings did not die but transformed, rising to the stars, sustaining cosmic order. Every Egyptian tomb, from grand mastabas to painted coffins, echoed this belief. The pyramid was the ultimate statement of Egypt's vision of life, death, and rebirth. Influence on later cultures. The pyramids fascinated outsiders from the start. For the Greeks, they were among the 7 wonders of the world, proof of human ambition. For Romans, they symbolized wealth and extravagance, yet they built their own pyramids in imitation, like the Pyramid of Cestius in Rome. In the medieval Islamic world, the pyramids were seen as storehouses of wisdom, built before the flood. For Europeans of the Renaissance and Enlightenment, they were mathematical puzzles, objects of study and measurement. Napoleon's soldiers camped at Giza in 1798, and he is said to have told them, "From the heights of these pyramids, 40 centuries look down upon you." Each culture reshaped the pyramids into its own mirror, but all agreed on their wonder. Pyramids in global imagination. In the modern world, pyramids have become universal symbols. They appear in art, literature, and architecture. From Paris's Glass Pyramid at the Louvre to Las Vegas's Luxor Hotel, their form is endlessly replicated. They symbolize eternity, stability, and mystery. Conspiracy theories and mystical claims persist, of hidden chambers, cosmic codes, or alien builders, showing how the pyramid's enigma fuels imagination. Even when distorted, their image remains compelling. The pyramid has become more than Egyptian, it has become human, belonging to all cultures as a symbol of what we can build and dream. Archaeology and science. Modern archaeology has revealed much of the pyramid's truth. Excavations show workers' villages, bakeries, cemeteries, and workshops, proving that free laborers, not slaves, built the pyramids. Studies of quarry marks, transport methods, and ramps show practical techniques. Scans with cosmic rays have even revealed hidden voids inside Khufu's pyramid. Science has demystified much, yet mystery remains. Questions about construction methods, symbolic meanings, and astronomical alignment still provoke debate. The pyramids remain open to discovery, blending knowledge with wonder. Lessons of the pyramids. The pyramids teach us many lessons. Human ambition, that we can build beyond our lifespans, creating works that outlast us. Community, that great achievements require organization, cooperation, and shared purpose. Belief, that monuments are not only material but spiritual, shaped by visions of eternity. Fragility and endurance, that while dynasties fall, some creations endure, bridging past and present. The pyramids remind us that humans are both builders and dreamers, shaping stone to embody faith. The eternal question, why? Why were they built? For Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, the pyramids were tombs, machines of eternity, stairways to the stars. But for us, they are also mirrors, reflecting our own search for meaning. Each generation has answered differently. Egyptians said, to ensure immortality. Greeks said, to show power. Mystics said, to encode secrets. Modern scientists say, to demonstrate organization and engineering. Perhaps the true answer is all of these. The pyramids endure because they embody not one meaning but many, open to endless interpretation. The pyramids today. Today, millions visit Giza each year, walking where pharaohs once walked, standing in the shadow of stone that has endured since before Abraham, before Homer, before Christ. Tourists marvel, scholars measure, locals live alongside them. They are not silent, they are alive with voices, footsteps, and gazes. They connect past to present, Egypt to the world. They are both national treasure and global heritage, symbols of Egypt and symbols of humanity. Reflection. As our journey ends, we stand before the pyramids once more. They rise from the desert like mountains of memory, eternal yet human. They remind us that long ago, on the banks of the Nile, people dreamed of eternity and made their dream real in stone. Their legacy is not only for kings but for us all. For in gazing upon them, we are reminded of our own mortality, our own ambitions, and our own longing for eternity. The pyramids whisper across time, humans built us, humans dreamed us, humans endure. Closing image. Picture the Giza Plateau at sunset. The pyramids glow gold in the fading light, their shadows stretching across the desert. Camels pass, tourists wander, archaeologists sift sand, locals sell souvenirs. The world has changed, but the pyramids remain. Above them, stars begin to shine, the same stars Khufu once looked upon. Stone, sky, and story join, eternal. Epilogue. The Great Pyramids were built as tombs for kings, but they became monuments for all humanity. They outlasted dynasties, survived invasions, and resisted time. They are both history and myth, fact and symbol. In their endurance, they teach us this, that human hands and human dreams, joined in purpose, can shape eternity. And so, we leave the sands of Giza, where Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure built their dreams of eternity in stone. Across 20 parts, we followed their vision, their workers, their rituals, their myths, and their legacy. The pyramids still rise from the desert, as silent witnesses to the ambition and faith of humanity. They are not only Egypt's monuments, but the world's, reminders that what we build and hope can endure beyond our lifetimes. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Until next time, may the pyramids stand steady in your imagination, eternal against the sky. Background historian out.